Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. Hi, hello-y, my name is Loey, and it is officially the most wonderful time of the year. The holiday season, yeah sure I guess, but it's mostly that time of year where I take a look back at all of the content that I created with you and for you. And I say with you because these scary side of TikTok videos would never be possible without all of you. And with the future of TikTok being pretty uncertain in 2025, I just wanted to say a really big thank you for all of the love and support that you have shown me on these videos, on my channel as a whole, whether you've been here for 1 day or 10 years. I don't anticipate these videos going away. If TikTok goes, then this content will be posted elsewhere, so it might just be the scary side of YouTube Shorts or something. But with TikTok, it's been so interactive between us where it's like, I'll go through my mentions and I'll just see you guys talking to me like we're friends, tagging me in your favorite scary video, being like, girl, this kept me up tonight. I love responding to you guys. I love talking to you. That's why I love filming scary side of TikTok videos, because it truly feels like such an interactive experience between me and you. If you've ever sent me a TikTok or even just watched these videos, thank you so much. So today I thought we'd take a look at all 35 scary TikTok stories that I shared with you this year. That's crazy to me, especially because this is a totally new section of the scary side of TikTok. It mostly came about because there have been so many trends where people have been telling scary stories on TikTok, these like 6 to 9 minute videos that just normally would never fit into a normal, you know, scary side of TikTok video. And you guys have had such an incredible response to them. They are actually my very favorite videos to film. So when I thought about the first compilation I wanted to put out this year, this is where I wanted to start. We'll have everything here today, from paranormal stories to mimic stories to just people's absolute horror experiences that they've been sharing on TikTok this year. So get yourself a drink and a snack, or maybe like a 5-course meal, and sit down. I know you've seen the length of this video, but I really hope you enjoy these scary TikTok stories from this year. And recently there has been a trend going around TikTok that you guys have been tagging me in, unlike anything I've ever seen before. I feel like I've said that in other videos, but I'm serious. This time, this is a trend literally made just for me. Because recently, in response to a video that has gone viral from TikTok user Audacitii, people all around the world are sharing their scariest ghost stories that sound unbelievable but are totally true.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
Today we're going to be taking a look at 5 true ghost stories that I found from this trend that literally scared me into sleeping with the lights on. I'm telling you, this trend is terrifying and I love it. I feel like we can't talk about this trend without first talking about the story that came from the creator of it, Audacitii, who starts out this video by saying, "Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first." Going on to set up their story, they and their family, when they were around 8 years old, moved to a very small town in the Midwest. She says it was a very old home. In fact, something she thought was built as part of the Homestead Act back in the 1800s or so. Tons of acres, a barn that she knew had once been inhabited by tons of animals but had since been burned down. Just a lot of history. And Audacitii says that she knew even as a child that she just was kind of an intuitive child. She didn't really know necessarily what to do with that intuition, but she knew that she could sense things around her. It was this intuition, this sort of curiosity about spirituality and ghosts and whatever was around her at that time that led her to trying out a Ouija board in this incredibly old house with a ton of history. Now, what happens from here is so terrifying, and as Audacitii says in the beginning of this video, sounds completely unbelievable, but according to this poster, is entirely true.
And of course, I dragged along my best friend and my sister and a couple other times, a couple other friends on this Ouija board journey where we would go and sit at the top of the stairs to the basement and we would turn all the lights off and turn candles on and then ask this thing questions, and it responded. And I don't tell people the story. It sounds psycho. The fact that other people are there to verify all of these things and validate gives me inner peace, but I don't tell people. But it worked. And unlike what I thought would happen when it would move, you know, even when we lift all of our hands off of it, it's still moving, is how aggressively it moved. It wasn't gentle. It was like very sharp. And so much time would pass when we were in there talking to this entity as well. Like, we would think 10 minutes went by and it would be 2 hours. Like, insane. Being little kids, we wanted to know questions and answers like, who are we going to marry when we grow up? Or how many kids are we going to have? Or just questions like that. And every single time we start, you know, it would give us answers at first, like, and it would tell us about itself. We would say, like, what's your name? And it would just say demon, D-E-M-O-N, like, over and over again. When we would ask questions about me, at first it would like give us answers, and then it would just spell repeatedly, B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C-H, B-I-T-C-H. Horrifying. Like, any question about me. We're also having like visuals of like hands reaching towards the planchette, like in the candlelight flicker. This entity gave us details saying that it was like buried in the cemetery, a cemetery that was like local, like the name was legit. It gave us like, I think it either gave us a plot number or it was just like the last name. And we did go there, and what we found was crazy.
While I'm unsure of what exactly it was that the poster found at the cemetery, she did post a couple of follow-ups to this original story time, which I super appreciate because she was sort of like the ring bearer of it all. Is that the right word here? The brave leader trudging us all into paranormal, spooky story darkness all over our For You pages. So in a follow-up video that went up, I think like a day or two after that original post, she shows a couple of Facebook posts dating back to 2009 talking about the Ouija board experiences.
So basically it says that the person we were talking to on the Ouija board claimed to be an 86-year-old woman, and we asked if I was going to have a child or if I was going to get married, you know, like the MASH questions. And then we asked if there was, I think this is this one. Yeah, we asked where she was, and she said in between life and death, and then called me a B-I-T-C-H. And then we have this other one where we ask, is there anyone else who would like to speak to us? And it says yes, and then we say who, and it says demon, and then we said why, and it spelled out he knows God. Like, mind you, we all were lifting our hands up, like watching it move. I completely forgot about this till I read it. And then we kept trying to ask innocent questions, like, what am I going to go to college for? B-I-T-C-H. Drinking this coffee to stay awake. I'm never going to sleep again.
Whatever this is, repeatedly calling her that word, like repeatedly referring to her as that, and calling itself demon over and over, as well as the he knows God tidbit. Absolutely terrifying. As somebody who also grew up in a haunted farmhouse, and that is going to be the story that I share for my stitch to Audacitity's video, there are some dark energies in those kinds of places for one reason or another. So following up to this as kind of like a part 3, Audacity has a friend of hers on FaceTime just kind of corroborating the story, saying what she remembered about these experiences. And she says pretty much the same thing that Audacity has been saying up until this point. But finally, in a truly terrifying turn of events, as a part 4, Audacity's mother sent over a video of the house that the Ouija board was used in.
I don't know. They're old. I want to go down here, but I want to show you. Oh, God. Oh, bugs. There's like this wall in there, and then there's a door that goes outside to the cellar, but you can see, I mean, this place is creepy as f***. I go back up the stairs. You guys did the Ouija board. Oh, there's Winnie. You guys did the Ouija board right outside of this door. And I think I'm covered in webs right now. Hi, Win.
I mean, it looks like nightmare fuel to me, man. Like, that looks like the kind of place where you would have a demonic Ouija board experience. I definitely understand why this was the story that kind of kicked all of these off, because it's terrifying from the very first video. Every single detail to it just makes it all the creepier. But thank you so much, Audacity, for starting this trend with your story. It scared me into not wanting to sleep tonight, but I'm really grateful for all of these amazing stories that you inspire people to tell, because Oh my God, are they creepy? The next story comes from TikToker teaganearley. Now, one of you tagged me in this TikToker's post, and she responded saying that she loved me. And I love her too, so we're gonna talk about her story. Teagan is a storyteller, producer, singer, actor who begins her video by saying that yes, Midwestern ghosts are simply built a bit different. Teagan was on her way to a rehearsal in Chicago one day. Now at this time she was living outside of the city, but she was driving in for this rehearsal when she saw a little white dog run across the road. This freaked her out to the point where she decided to pull over and see if she could catch this dog. So she leaves her car parked in like a street parking spot and chases after this dog. She's going street after street, corner after corner, like calling after it, trying to catch up with it. The dog is just speed racer, bolting down the street. She loses sight of it after one corner, but continues walking until she sees these huge cemetery gates. And along with this cemetery came a man. A man that we will get to know over the course of this story.
I eventually come across the front gates of the oldest and biggest cemetery in the city of Chicago, Rose Hill Cemetery. And for those of you who are not from Chicago, there's a lot of overhead trains. They're awesome. I love them. There's like an overhead train that creates like an underpass. Then you go through that underpass, and then there's these giant Gothic, gorgeous front gates to the cemetery. And under the underpass, so not like in front of the gates of the cemetery, but the underpass right in front of the cemetery, there's this cop and like parked cop car and then cop who is taking a smoke break. And already like some stuff felt weird about this guy. He had like a big 80s handlebar mustache. I mean, I guess those could be coming back in, slay. And then like both his uniform and the squad car did not look like the modern ones that I see driving around Chicago all the time. But like nothing else seemed particularly off about this guy. So I thought, you know, maybe the precinct is just a little underfunded or something. Like, and they can't afford new equipment every couple of years. So I walk up to this man and I say, hey, trying to ask about the dog. And before I can even get my question out, he says, are you looking for that little white dog? And I'm like, yes. Do you know where it went? And before he answers, we have a full conversation. He's like, is it your dog? I'm like, no, but I don't know whose dog it is. I just figured I would help because I have some free time. And he's like, okay, well, the dog just ran through the front gates of the cemetery. And y'all, the cemetery is massive. So I was kind of like, okay, at least it's in a gated area where it can't really run anywhere else. Like it's gonna be in there somewhere, but it's gonna take me forever to find this dog, especially if I'm the only one looking for it somehow. So at this point, I thank the officer. I start walking towards the gates because it's public, it's open. People walk through there with their dogs during the day all the time and stuff. Like it's basically a park. And the officer stops me in my tracks and says, wait, before you go in there, just so you know, those front gates close at 5 on the dot. And afterwards, nothing gets out. And I laugh because like I thought he was kidding, but I still remember how my skin crawled when he said this to me. But he looks me dead in the eyes and he goes, no, seriously, you're going to want to be out of there by 5.
Now our poster sets off to go and find the dog in the cemetery. It's not super far from where this policeman's squad car is to like where she's walking. She's only been walking for around 5 seconds when she realizes maybe she should ask which direction the dog ran in. When she turns around, both the police officer and the squad car are gone.
So I turn around not 5 seconds after I had spoken to this man, and both the man and the squad car were gone. And because I know you will all probably be wondering, no, I did not hear an engine start. No, I did not hear a car door slam. I did not hear sirens. I did not even hear this man walking. All that was left of him and his squad car was the smell of cigarette smoke still in the air. I was that close where I could still smell the cigarette smoke, but the car and the man were gone.
So really weird, but she's putting it out of her mind. Like there's no way that this is like as creepy as I think it is. She looks around for the dog for around an hour and a half. She says during this time weird things were happening. She would hear whispering sounds and it didn't really seem like she was alone. The search is taking such a long time. She goes to get her car and comes back with the car. The cemetery is so so massive. This is not like a job she can do alone on foot. However, as it gets closer and closer to 5, she realizes there's no way she's going to find this dog and make it out of the cemetery before the gates close. So she heads back to the exit.
I was looking in my rearview mirror, kind of like scanning my mirrors and stuff to see if I could see any trace of movement. And a big black dog ran across like my rearview mirror, so behind my car. And I had 2 thoughts in that moment. The first of which was, oh my gosh, maybe that dog is chasing the other dog. I should turn back around and go look. But the second one, of course, was that cop saying, after 5, nothing gets out. So I did one of the few smartest things I've ever done, and I listened to the cop. I ignored whatever that creature was, and I got out of that cemetery. And sure enough, I got out of there literally right as the clock turned 5. I think I got out of there at like 58. And then at 4:59, 5 o'clock, the gates closed. Like they're on an automatic timer and they locked shut.
A lot of people in the comments were saying that maybe this black dog was there to try to distract Tegan into staying in the cemetery, to try to get her to stay and look for the little white dog. But thankfully, she knew better. Thankfully, the cop had warned her. She got out okay, and she found the dog. After this entire experience, something just didn't sit right with her. She couldn't shake the image of the cop and what had happened out of her mind. So she started doing a little bit of research. And wouldn't you know it, she found something.
3 days into this research, I find an online database that a bunch of veteran police officers started to honor officers who had been killed in action or otherwise like had passed on. I think this database went as far back as like the 1890s. Like it was very extensive research. And when I got to 1984, I remember this so distinctly, I had a physical reaction because suddenly I clicked and I was looking into the face of the man that I had spoken to not 3 days earlier. And that man had died in 1984. Not on that spot, but he was buried in Rose Hill Cemetery. Oh, y'all thought I wouldn't show receipts? This is the guy. This is the guy I had a full conversation with before he vanished into thin air. And I'm only blocking out his name and his information out of respect. And I was wrong. Sorry, not 84, 86, but yeah.
There he is, Patrolman Jay. And I truly believe this is exactly who Tegan saw that day. Exactly who warned her in that moment, hey, nobody is getting out of those gates come 5 p.m. Someone who wanted to help in the afterlife and didn't want this girl to miss her rehearsal because she was trapped behind the gates of a cemetery. This story is literally one of the craziest ghost stories I've ever heard in my entire life. Now, there was a follow-up to this, a part 2 that Tegan posted, in which she talked about a little more some of the strange things that happened during her search for the little white dog that maybe were paranormal, maybe were just really bizarre. It's pinned on her profile if you want to go give it a look, but I thought that this particular story about the ghost cop and I don't know, just this entire thing was just so unbelievable and yet seems so real, heartwarming and terrifying all at the same time. I don't know. I feel like especially after Audacitity's original video, this is a really, really, really sweet one, but also really scary. The next story comes from TikTok user Loiis.layne, twin. This is not the only paranormal story that this poster told for this trend. However, in this story in particular, she talks about mimics. So it's the one that I chose to talk about for this video, but if you want to hear about her other one, go check out her page. Layne says that the events of this story take place from October of 2022 to January of 2023. When it all begins, Layne is spending a weekend home from college at her boyfriend's parents' house. They had just gotten a wood wick candle. Do y'all know what that is? It's like a candle, but the wick is wood, so it crackles. I don't know if you've never heard it, like It just sounds like a fireplace. Like that's the appeal to it. And Layne's boyfriend's parents are really like, listen to this candle. Like, I don't know. They just really wanted her to vibe out to it, I guess. So she's sitting at the kitchen table. She's doing her homework. She's just relaxing, very zoned in on this sound. Her boyfriend isn't in the room. Her boyfriend's parents are like facing away from her, backs to her, watching TV, basically. And this is when she hears something strange.
I'm listening, when suddenly I hear my boyfriend's voice, like, hey, Layne, come from behind me. So I turn around and I'm looking, and these people are pretty religious, and you wouldn't expect anything to happen in their house. So I thought it was my boyfriend. So I got up, I went into the dining room with the lights off, and I'm looking around for him, and I can't find him. And I'm calling out to him, walking around this house, calling out to him, no response. I text him and I'm like, where are you? He comes downstairs and he's like, I was in my room, like, what's going on? And I think my face was a little freaked out. He told me essentially that he had been in his room for the last hour and it wasn't him. And he promises me that it wasn't him.
Now, this experience really freaked Layne out, but it seems as though the family was kind of like, she says like, not like it happens, but kind of like they almost like brushed it off a little bit, like don't really pay it any mind. And she's trying really hard to be rational here. She's trying to kind of convince herself that this is not paranormal. There has to be a reason why this happened to her. It's nothing. She pushes it out of her head. Fast forward to January of 2023 when Layne's boyfriend's family gets a dog, a little Wheaton named Oakley, which is important for what's to come. Now, Layne and her boyfriend are away from the house once again. Now, they were out all night. When they get back the following morning, Layne's boyfriend's dad pulls her aside and says, I heard it too.
My boyfriend's dad pulls me aside and he's like, I heard it too. And I was like, what did you hear? Because it had been months at that point and I had no idea what he was talking about. He goes, Andrew's voice. I heard Andrew's voice. And he goes on and proceeds to tell me that last night he heard Andrew open the garage door and go into the bathroom right next to the garage door and say like, hey, I'm home. He responds back to it. And he knows he's not crazy because the dog got up, Oakley, and he walked towards the garage door. And when Oakley wasn't coming back, he got up and went to go see what it was about. Then the bathroom door was open and nobody was there. He checks Andrew's room. He's not there.
It truly sounds like they had a mimic experience in that home. My family had one as well, and it sounded really, really similar. Hearing each other's voices, just saying things when neither one of them was home, seeing the back of each other's heads going in and out of rooms or leaving the home. They would hear doors open and close. It really, truly sounds like this was a mimic experience. And I would be really curious to know, I guess, just how this ended. I think that there was more to this story. And like I said, Layne has other paranormal stories on her profile. She's a really great storyteller, so check her out. I will have her and all of the other TikTokers that I am mentioning today listed down below. This story, however, is truly terrifying. And the moment she said that Andrew's dad said, I heard it too, my stomach dropped. The next story comes from TikToker FeetQueen93. And this one honestly might be the scariest out of all of them that I'm talking about today. If I'm totally honest, the visuals of it are just absolutely petrifying, and you'll understand as we get into this video. I don't want to call this poster Feet Queen the entire time that I talk about this story, so I'm gonna call her Erica since that's what it says her name is on her Instagram. Erica was looking for a place to live after a breakup, and she stumbled upon a room and a house on Facebook Marketplace for only $250 a month. She was like, score, this is perfect. She moves into the house. It's a very, very, very old home. The house is made out of local stone and it has been converted into different apartment units. And to get to Erica's room, you have to go to a bathroom and then you're in her room, but it's also connected to another bedroom. They kind of like closed it off with furniture so it felt like a real room. Either way, she was all moved in and it's now the first night she's ever sleeping there.
The first night that I was sleeping there, I was woken up out of a dream, don't know what I was dreaming about, and I saw this woman just like hovering over me, looking at me. And I looked at her for a few seconds, and when she realized I was looking at her, I just saw her eyes get really wide and she looked nervous and she disappeared.
In the moment, this poster says that she didn't really give this that much thought. Like, she was coming out of a dream. Yes, it was weird. It was probably pretty creepy to see, but she didn't know, like, if that could have been real. She was coming out of a dream. She was sleeping, you know, like it was her first night in a new place. She sort of brushes it off to the side, doesn't think about it that much. But the very next day, as she's going through the bathroom, you know, that she has to go through to get out of her bedroom, she sees somebody crouched in the shower.
I swore that I saw someone like crouched in the corner of the shower. And I thought that was weird. But because the night before and how I was like, that was probably just a dream. I'm probably just paranoid right now. I'm not going to give it any credit.
Eventually it gets to the point where Erica adopts a little kitty. I think you can hear a cat meowing in the background of this video, which is very cute. But at the time, she was only 19 years old. The cat's food was more expensive than hers. I'm sure a lot of you can understand, I understand, what it's like to be a struggling college student trying to support yourself along with your pets. So she does the responsible thing and she gives her kitty away to a very good friend who is going to take wonderful care of her. Now, this was all well and good, right? But seemingly, this is just where the paranormal nightmare of this story began.
But that little figure that I had seen crouched in the shower was a little boy. And he was very upset that my cat was not there anymore. So what did he do? He terrorized me. Like, it got to the point where I had to rearrange my room so when I would wake up and roll over in the middle of the night, I wouldn't see him because he would stand in the corner where I had my cat's stuff as if like protesting that she was gone. And that was every single night from that point on. During the day, I would have hangers and clothes fly out of my closet. Did not matter. Door would open, closet and clothes would just fall out. It became a normal thing, you know, like I would see him and I wouldn't think twice about it because I didn't want to engage. I didn't want to encourage it. So what I would do is I wouldn't say anything. If he was really scaring me, I'd go to someone else's house. I'd just dip out because, you know, like child spirits, you don't really know if it's a real child or not. I think this was a real child because he was just throwing tantrums and taking it all out on me.
Now, it seems to me that Erica became somewhat adjusted to living with this creepy little ghost boy, okay? I think that maybe she had some sympathy for him. I mean, it's clear that she feels like she understood why he was there. You know, he's protesting the cat being gone. However, what she says happens next one day as she is literally just sitting there folding laundry is an image that I will never be able to get out of my head.
I was folding my laundry on my bed and I watched him crawl out of my closet, look at me, and crawl underneath my bed. It actually makes me sick to my stomach, even thinking about it, because I don't know if you've seen any scary movie. It was horrifying. So yeah, I dipped. I didn't come back for like 2 days because that was horrifying. And before I left though, I did get on my hands and knees and look under the bed to see if he was there. One of the bravest moments of my life, he wasn't. And at that point, I was already done. You know, I didn't care that I didn't see him. I was done.
After this point, Erica left the house for 2 days. And she also says that after this point, it never got that bad ever again. However, every single day, she would see him crouching in the shower.
And the way that our bathroom is set up, like the mirror faced the shower, and there would be times where like I would be getting ready. I'm crying. I would be getting ready and I would see his little stinking head pop up in the mirror. And I had to start sleeping with a face mask because I would roll over in the middle of the night and he would either be in the corner of my cat's stuff or he would be at the end of my bed.
What's odd is that at the end of the video, Erica says that nobody else in the house ever had any ghost experiences that she knew of. It was really just her. So maybe she's just hypersensitive to spirit. I kind of get that feeling from her. I mean, even from the very first experience she had in the house where the woman was like hovering over her, looking down at her. And when the woman like realized that she could see her, like she got kind of freaked out and then like disappeared. That just seems almost like, I don't know, spirits that maybe hadn't been acknowledged by anyone else before. But again, the little boy, oh my God, I can't even say it, crawling out of the closet and under the bed. It is the scariest thing I can picture. I literally, like, I would have nightmares about that to this day. Erica, babe, hope you're getting good sleep at night because that would have traumatized me. Lastly for today, we have a story from TikTok user alexandralunetta. This story is captioned, "Somebody get A24 on the phone," and honestly, after hearing this, I'm pretty sure you'll agree. When Alexandra was just 3 years old, her family moved from a small apartment to a big house. Now, during the viewing process of this house, they stumbled across some pretty bizarre things. It's her 3 older siblings and her mother who are there with the realtor checking out this house for a viewing. Now, everything seems fine. They're walking through the house, they love it, it seems perfect for their family. However, it's when they reach the basement that they discovered something bizarre.
When my family went into the basement, they saw dried droplets of blood splattered on the floor and on the walls. They found bird feathers, and then they saw a satanic symbol drawn on the wall. Now, the previous owners of this house belonged to a mother and her son, and according to this woman, she mostly lived upstairs, she let her son live in the basement. She said she kind of just let him do his own thing, left him alone because he was an adult.
Despite this, the family did move into the home. Now, Alexandra explains that she was the youngest of her siblings. There's quite a significant age gap between herself and her siblings. So being the only child in the house, she seemingly had all of the paranormal experiences. It started off with the growling. She would hear low-pitched growling coming from behind closed doors when she was very young.
I'd be walking through the house and I would hear low-pitched growling coming from behind closed doors, closet doors. I distinctly remember this one time walking past the closet door in the basement, and I put my ear to the door to make sure that I was hearing what I thought I was hearing. And I was, and so I ran upstairs, I grabbed my mom, I was like, "You need to go and open the door because there's something in there." And so she opens the door and there's nothing in there.
The older Alexandra got, the worse it became. By the age of 13, it was not just hearing things. Now she was physically seeing things within the walls of her home.
The paranormal activity got increasingly bad, and it was so bad to the point where it was disrupting my sleep. Every single night I was woken up at 3 a.m. on the dot. At first it was just my TV would be turned on, or I'd hear like really creepy noises coming from my closet or like a dark corner. Now, the way that my room was set up was I had a room upstairs, and my room was at the very end of this long, narrow hallway. And when I was laying down on my pillow in my bed, and my door was open, I could see directly down the hallway. So when I would be woken up at 3 in the morning, I'd open my eyes, and I slept with my door open because I was so scared. And when I would look down the hallway, I saw this very tall, dark figure. It was all black. Couldn't see its face, but I knew it was a man. I just knew. This figure, every single night, he would be standing at the end of the hallway, and he would walk slowly down the hallway into my room and stand at the foot of my bed and just try to intimidate me.
The reason I included Alexandra's story in today's video is because her story reminds me so much of my own from my time living in my haunted farmhouse in Georgia that I talk about all the time. I truly think that it's where my fascination with the paranormal began. I had a similar experience with a tall, shadowy figure that I just knew was a man, and I knew was a bad man who did not mean me or my family well in any way. During this time, her family isn't believing that like the paranormal activity is what's actually disrupting her sleep. Her mom takes her to a neurologist to see if everything is okay.
The doctors could never come up with anything because my brain activity was normal, so they just conjured it up to me being a child, and it was just my imagination. It was all in my head.
By the time that Alexandra reached high school, most of her siblings had moved out of the home. Once again, she was the youngest of all of her siblings, so she ended up taking her older sister's bedroom that had been in the basement of the home. Remember the one from the beginning? The one with the blood and the satanic symbol? Yeah, this girl is really brave. And unfortunately, this is also when the paranormal activity became physical.
I would wake up with bruises on my body. I'd wake up with scratches on my body in threes. And one time it was so bad that I woke up from being choked. I would hear tapping on the walls, banging on the walls. I'd hear scratches. I would hear creepy ass growls, noises. And I also would often smell rotten eggs. At this point, you know, I figured that whatever was haunting me was still the same entity that it was upstairs, the man I was talking about, but no, this time it was a woman. One of the very first times I had ever seen her, I was having a sleepover with my friends, and I was woken up in the middle of the night, classic, and she was standing in the corner of my bedroom, and she was just standing there, staring down at me. She had a long, tattered dress. Her limbs were all decrepit and broken, and her hair was long and ratty and dark, and I could not see her face. At this point in time, I had grown so accustomed to this that I just didn't care anymore. Like, it was a part of my life, and it didn't scare me. I remember waking up, looking at her, and being like, I'm going back to sleep.
That image of the lady that she just described with the arms and the legs being broken, along with that sulfur smell of the rotten eggs and stuff, it literally sounds demonic. From the blood to the weird symbols on the wall to the activity that she's describing, the bruises, the scratches, the 3 a.m., the all of it. It sounds demonic. However, you have to remember that Alexandra moved into this house when she was like 3. She's in high school now. She's used to this. She wakes up, she sees this lady, she's like, I don't care. Rolls back over, goes to sleep. She's just over it at this point. She's not really talking about this with her siblings. Her mom doesn't believe her, just thinks it's like a neurological thing. So what other choice did she have than to look at what she was seeing in that moment, that terrifying image of that lady, than to just roll over and go to sleep. But there was one final experience that Alexandra shared in this video, in which on one Black Friday, she got a call from her brother around 2 in the morning saying, you need to come back to the house right now. I'm not going back into that house until you come home. She comes home quickly. It seems as though her brother is kind of the only other person who really had like paranormal experiences like she had, but I still don't think anyone was having them like she was. Like, she was very clearly getting the worst of the activity in this home. She asks him, what happened? Why won't you go back in the house? He won't tell her. He won't tell her. They're standing in the kitchen. She's kind of trying to calm him down, you know, get him back on earth. They're talking about random stuff. They decide that they're going to go to his room, which is also down in the basement. But in order to do that, they have to pass by that long, narrow hallway.
And my family was sleeping, so all the lights were off. As we're passing the hallway, I hear a very low-pitched growl coming from the end of the hallway. I didn't say anything to my brother. I didn't look at him. I didn't act different. We get downstairs and we get into his room, and he looks at me and he says, did you hear that? This was like the ultimate confirmation for me. Like, everything that I had been told regarding, like, it's all in your head, like, it's not true, you're just a kid, whatever. It was finally confirmed that, no, this was a real experience. Finally, he tells me why he wouldn't go back in the house, like, what scared him. And he told me that he was going out for a cigarette, and before he went out the front door, he had a really horrible feeling. He turned around, he looked up the stairs, and it was that woman that I had seen previously. He described her wearing the same thing. He described her looking the same, and he said that she was just standing at the top of the stairs, staring down at him, just trying to scare him.
Following this, Alexandra, along with the help of her brother, said that it took a lot of time and intention, but they eventually got these entities out of their home. She said that the paranormal activity did persist until the day that the home was gone. Like, things would move, you'd hear sounds, but it was not this intense, brutal, demonic thing that it had been before. When she was 23, Alexandra's mom sold the house. And the night that she moved out, the night that she got to the new place, Alexandra had a dream about 3 entities. The 3 entities that had been in that home, basically telling her goodbye.
The very night that I moved out and into the new place, I had a dream of the 3 entities, demons that were haunting me, and finally they showed me their faces, and they were essentially like, goodbye, like, this is it, you've been released.
And that was the end of the story. This to me sounds like something straight out of like The Haunting in Connecticut. That's what I kept thinking about hearing this story. Like the room in the basement kind of reminded me of The Haunting in Connecticut. The smell of the sulfur, the way that it attached itself so heavily to the child in this family. I can't even imagine what kind of other stories came out of that home. I also understand Alexandra's parents not believing her. I'm curious though, if they did at all. Because when I lived in my insanely haunted farmhouse, my parents didn't believe me, but then when we moved out, they were like, yeah, no, we believed you the whole time. We just didn't want to say anything because we were scared too. Well, my mom did anyway. My dad was still kind of skeptical, but my mom told me after the fact that she'd had an experience as well. So I'm curious if her family ever experienced anything that they didn't tell her about. It's really creepy though that her brother saw that woman the same as she did. I have a video for you guys that's sort of a sequel to a video I did a few months ago, which I was pleasantly surprised to see how much you all enjoyed. That video was on stories, specifically paranormal stories, coming out of the Audacitii Stitch trend. If you're unfamiliar with this, essentially a creator named Audacitii came online and said,
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
And TikTok did what TikTok does, and it responded with scary stories. Today I have 6 of them to share with you all. Everything from haunted dolls to mimics and so much more. These are the 6 scary videos that I found out of this trend that genuinely terrified me. And trust me when I tell you, I've watched like every single one of these videos. Thank you as always for tagging me in your scary finds. If you ever want to participate in these videos, follow me over at loiis.layne on TikTok and give me a tag in your favorite scary videos. Our first video comes from Megan, aka Megs_zone on TikTok. For Megan, she has a number of scary stories that come out of her childhood home. One she believes is haunted. Now, Megan's family, for a period of time, hosted Korean exchange students in their home. They were like a host family. And for Megan, she's really used to just sharing her space. In fact, one of their Korean exchange students even lived in her room with her. They even shared a bunk bed together, like one of them on the top bunk, one of them on bottom. So Megan has just been really used to sharing a space. However, in this family home, the carpet was being replaced. And so her father ended up taking off every single door in the house, I guess just to make that easier. When I first was listening to it, I was like, do you really have to do that? And then I realized, yeah, the door can't just be in the way while you're trying to carpet. So anyways, Megan is like, I just need like more privacy than this. You know, she seems to be quite used to sharing a space and all of that, but not to have a door at all. It's like she really wanted more privacy. And so her grandmother for Christmas got her one of those privacy bead curtains. Do you know the ones I'm talking about? The problem with these privacy beads in particular were that they didn't fully reach the floor. There was like a small gap between the floor and where the privacy beads ended. And that little gap is where the absolute horror of this video begins.
And my sister Callie would always come in and just steal my clothes, my makeup, whatever she wanted to use. And I was a pretty light sleeper, so she would slide under the door beads to come in the morning before school and to not wake me up. There was one particular night where my exchange student was visiting her uncle in another state for Thanksgiving. So I was alone in my room. It was nighttime. Everybody was in bed and it was dark and I heard my door beads. So I looked over and I see what looks like my sister, just like her silhouette. And she's got long, curly hair. And she was crawling on all fours with her hair. And her hair was like hanging in front of her face. And she was crawling on all fours, sliding under the door beads. And I could see the door beads like hitting against her back as she slid under. And once she got under, she like hurried to the end of my bed where the closet was at the foot of my bed. So I was thinking to myself, like, oh, I caught her in the act this time. I'm going to totally tell her that I knew she was stealing my clothes. So I snuck to the edge, to the end of the bunk bed. And I just tried to scare her. And when I looked over the end of my bed, there was nobody there. So I just started screaming, and then my sister ended up running down the hall, and she came in and turned on my light, and she's like, what? And I was just like, and I just freaked out and told her what had happened. But that was one time that was super, super creepy.
Yeah, she sees her sister crawling, seemingly with her hair over her face like she's Samara from The Ring. We actually have another story where some kind of entity mimicked someone's loved one. And I don't know, this kind of stuff, that's the stuff that really freaks me out, because you guys know I've talked about it kind of at length. My family had a mimic experience with what I guess I call was a mimic, but it was just some kind of entity in a house that is now mine, where my brother and my dad would see each other, but it wasn't them. They'd never see the front of each other's faces. They'd see each other out of the corner of their eye, walking away, stuff like that. But if imagine seeing your sibling crawl under your door on all fours. You're like, oh my God, they're playing a weird, creepy little prank. They're just not there. That video truly terrified me. However, Megan does have other paranormal stories under this trend, so make sure to check out her account to hear the rest of those. As always, I will have everybody that I talk about today listed out down below. A lot of these creators did multiple videos for this trend, so yeah, check them out. Our next video comes from TikTok user kayla.gow. Kayla explains that if you knew her family history, you would know that her mother's family has been struck with just a lot of tragedy. Her mother lost both of her brothers at the age of 38, really unexpectedly. They just got sick one day, and it happened very quickly. Her mother also lost both of her parents in her 50s, just a ton of loss in this family. As a result of this, Kayla says that their family plot, their family graveyard, grew quite quickly. There was a lot of people to visit, a lot of people who were very loved by her mother and by their family. Her mother also has surviving sisters. That's the family that she has. So one day her mother says that she and her sisters are going to go to the family graveyard plot, and they are going to go make arrangements basically for all of their loved ones, their brothers, their parents. And they're just gonna, go spend this time together, all of them. And so Kayla decides to go because some of her cousins are also going that she hasn't seen in a really long time. But something she highlights in the beginning of this story is that when it comes to this cemetery, there is no cell service. We're not talking about a weak signal, a bad signal. There is no cell phone service in this graveyard. In fact, nothing around except for maybe an old church and a ton of farmland. They're on the way to the cemetery, and one of Kayla's cousins is playing around with a digital camera that she has. This is I think she said 2013, maybe 2014. So digital cameras just were a cool thing to have. And so they're playing with this digital camera on the drive down to the cemetery. And it's the minute that they hit the cemetery line, the camera just stops working. It had a full battery and now it just won't turn on at all. So that's the first weird thing that happens. The scariest thing seems to be that one of Kayla's cousins cannot find her cell phone. She thinks her young son had it last. He's a 7-year-old kid. He's like, I don't have it. I don't know where your phone is. Well, she had it when they arrived, so the cell phone has to be somewhere. The entire family is looking around the graveyard, in the cars, just everywhere they can for this cell phone. And that's when something really bizarre happens.
And there's no cell phone service, so nobody can call it and figure out where it is, right? So there's a fence that separates where you park your car and where the cemetery begins. Our family plots are right on the fence line, or at least very close to it. We're all inside this fence. Nobody has been outside of this fence. And I know this because I'm always the observer. I'm always watching people and seeing what they're doing. While my mom and her sisters are over there fiddling with flower arrangements, my cousin and I are kind of sitting on the gravestone, and I'm watching my cousins to see what they're doing. Nobody walks outside of that fence. I'm telling you, there's no way. No one can find this phone. And all of a sudden, my mom's oldest sister, her phone starts making the weirdest noise. It was the weirdest beeping sound. It was not a sound that was programmed into the phone. It was not a downloaded sound. I don't know how to describe it other than it just wasn't her ringtone. She honestly didn't even know it was her phone at first because of how weird the sound was. When she held up her phone, there was 2 really alarming things that I noticed. First, the phone should not have been ringing. Even though it was showing that someone was calling, there was no service in the corner. Didn't make any sense. The second thing that surprised us all is we're standing in a circle watching this phone ring. There's no one else out there. And the phone that is calling hers is the phone that is missing. And this is the first point in the trip I start to feel really uneasy. Like, I'm trying to leave at this point. I'm like, Mom, like, I don't feel good about being here. Like, I really just want to go. But nobody else seems to be listening to me. And in the midst of them not listening to me, what does my aunt do? She answers the phone. It's not a person on the other end of it. It is like this crackling sound, like someone like popping some like rocks or rolling rocks with their hand. And my mom and her sisters start crying, and they're saying like, this is our dad calling us. This is our dad. And I'm looking around and I'm like, is nobody else scared? At this point, I'm ready to walk out of this place and just leave. Like, I literally head to the car. And as I'm walking out of this car, there's like this little covered pavilion that's like kind of by the entrance of the cemetery on the other side of the fence where the cars are parked. And sitting on that pavilion is my cousin's phone, face down, locked. Nobody was out there to have called from that phone to my aunt's number. When my cousin unlocks that phone, there is no record of a phone call. There's nothing on it. It says no service. No phone call has been made. How is that possible? I don't know.
I think, personally, I think that when it comes to people feeling like something is a sign from their loved ones, I'm never going to be anybody ever to tell you that a sign you believe from a loved one is fake just because it seems different to me, because I feel like if I said some of the signs that I feel my dad has left for me, people would be like, well, I mean, that's just like a thing that could happen. And I know how discouraging that would feel. So I'm definitely not saying it's not that, but I also believe that when you get like a gut feeling of being terrified, of being unsettled, of feeling like something is just wrong, I don't think that's ever a loved one. I don't think our loved ones scare us. But that's my opinion on that. And clearly I have 2 very differing opinions that clash with each other in this case. But I do think it's just fascinating. And the entire time that I was watching this, I was thinking about, I was gonna say my childhood cemetery, which sounds crazy, but I grew up across the street from this really old cemetery, and I used to just walk through the cemetery all the time, visiting graves, talking to people who died in the 1800s. It's really no wonder that I turned out the way I did and why I have the job that I do. When I spent my youth walking across the street to a cemetery in the middle of summer to talk to someone's dead great-great-grandmother. Anyways, if you're thinking about the camera, by the way, that camera that we talked about in the beginning that randomly stopped working, oh, there's a resolution to that, and it's pretty freaking creepy.
I climb back in my aunt's Camry and we're driving down the road leaving at this point. They've had their waterworks show. I'm pretty shook. I'm not feeling too good. And my cousin's over there still fiddling with her camera. As we get down the road, she's like, I still don't understand why this camera doesn't work. She goes to turn it on and it says full battery.
Kayla says that she's known occasionally as an overreactor and asks us what we would do in her place. But I really think, like, I don't think it's overreacting. I think that if you have a gut feeling, a gut fear, that's trying to tell you something. So yeah, not overreacting in my opinion. But I thought that story was really, really weird. Next up, we're taking a look at a video from TikTok user vinibyte. Now, this poster, Vivian, when she's a child, her father was in the military and he was overseas for a period of time. And when he comes back from that tour, Vivian is so excited to see him. She's just missed him so much that she's like, it gets to the nighttime and she's like, well, I want to sleep in bed with you, which her dad, of course, says yes to. It's the middle of the night. Her dad is fast asleep beside her in bed. She starts to hear something outside of the bedroom.
So I slept in his bed and his door was open, and I was up that night late reading with a flashlight because I was like, oh, I'm gonna blow his socks off reading this book to him. And that night I heard footsteps coming up the stairs and it was like keys jangling, and so I like go under the covers, have the covers up to here, and in the doorway I see an apparition of my father. My dad is laying next to me, but I see my dad as plain as day. Oh, it makes me sick just thinking about it. He's like a little bit transparent, like I can kind of see through him, but it's my father. It's 2000s, glasses on the back of the head, spiked cargo shorts with the keys on the carabiner. Like, it was exactly my dad. Then he starts going, come here, Vivian. It's my name. Come here, Vivian. And I was like, no way. And I put my covers over my head, and when I looked back out, he was gone.
That sounds like one of those 2-sentence horror stories, like the one where the mother is calling for a kid and the kid goes downstairs towards the sound of their mom's voice and their mom pulls them into the closet and says, don't go, I heard it too. Like one of those stories that sounds so terrifying, it can't possibly be real. And yet I truly think it is. Like I fully believe the story, because you know what I say, you believe kids, you believe pets when they have a paranormal experience. We have more stories with kids like later in this video who had paranormal experiences. And I just always feel like kids know, pets know. I feel like adults, we have this almost guard up where it's like, we'll explain away a paranormal event. You know what I mean? A kid doesn't know how to do that. Like a kid isn't going to be rational. You know, they're just going to tell you what they saw. And this, seeing this, having your family member in bed beside you and seeing them in the doorway while they motion for you to come here, like, oh my God, terrifying. Vivian does tell a second story in this video. And this one comes from when she was just a bitty baby. She doesn't remember this, but it's been told to her by her family. One night she starts crying in her nursery, and so her father gets up and he goes to her room to go and check on her. However, he gets to this room and there's no baby.
Crib empty. No baby. He starts freaking out, obviously. And he's searching around the house, following my cry. I'm downstairs, 3 stories down, on top of the pool table. I'm sat on the pool table, like holding a pool ball, crying. I'm telling you, I was probably like 14 months, 15 months. You cannot get out of your crib, nor could I walk down all those stairs and then get on top of a pool table. In that house, me and my sisters, we were on top of the stairs. They're a lot older than me, and they know this story. We were on top of the stairs, and we were looking down into the darkness. Nobody else was home, and we were just like playing with a bouncy ball, like throwing shit down there. You know how kids are stupid. And we threw a bottle cap down there, and it threw back at us, like.
This is not a case of a kid like crawling out of their crib. She literally somehow made it all the way down the stairs and was sitting on the pool table. Even if she could have done that, how did she get on the pool table? You know what I mean? I feel like the first time I listened to it, I was like, well, maybe it's not necessarily a bad spirit, like maybe it's a playful one. And then I remembered what happened with her dad, where she saw him in the doorway, like beckoning her to come closer. And suddenly I was like, oh, never mind. This is not a good thing. This is a thing that very clearly it's taking her downstairs and putting her on a pool table. It's disguising itself as her father and telling her to come here in the middle of the night. I don't know. Her videos are so scary. And again, she's one of those creators who has multiple scary videos on her account. So go and check her out. Really, really quickly, you guys, this is not my first time filming this video. I filmed it the other night and the part that you just watched actually got corrupted. So I had to refilm this and I'm about to play you the rest of this video. I'm in like the same outfit and everything, just in case, I don't know, I look a little different. Then from TikTok user, it's just me, Kayla G. We have a haunted doll story, possibly. It's a little complicated and we'll get into it. The way that Kayla starts this story just put such like a pit of unease in my stomach.
I debated for a long time on if I even wanted to tell this story because, quite frankly, every time I tell it, it just creeps me out all over again. So I kind of try to just not think about it. But a few years ago, our family experienced one of the scariest things I've ever experienced in my nearly 37 years of life.
Like, I heard that and there was just something about the way she said it, that it's the scariest thing that's ever happened in her 37 years of life. I don't know, it hooked me, and it's for a good reason, because this story is crazy. This is a couple of years ago. It takes place in 2020, and Kayla at this time has 2 children. Her older of her 2 children at this point is sleeping really, really soundly through the night. Self-soothes, just kind of like puts himself down in bed and is out like a light. And it's around the time that Kayla comes into possession of a doll that is kind of just passed down in her family, seemingly as an heirloom. It originally belonged to like a great-great-grandmother, and now it's just gone through cycles of various women in her family. And she specifically says that like people in her family think this doll is haunted. So it's around the time that the doll comes into her possession and around the time that her son interacts with the doll that his sleeping patterns begin to change. One night he wakes up literally screaming from a nightmare, like a nightmare that scares him so badly he wakes up his parents screaming. So Kayla is like, I'll go lay with him. She goes to his room, she lays down with him, and he's clearly unsettled about something. But specifically, she says that he keeps looking at something over her shoulder.
So I go to him, I lay down with him in his room, and I'm like, it's okay, buddy, you know, I'm here, I'm gonna lay with you, I'll be with you tonight, you don't have to be scared. And the whole time I'm laying with him, trying to get him to go back to sleep, he is like staring over my shoulder off into the corner of his room. And I go to turn my head to see what he's staring at, and he stops my face with his hands. He's like, no, mommy, don't look at him. He's really scary. So I'm like, all right, let's go lay down in my bed. So I carry him and all of his things. We go lay down in my bed. And he's still just not very settled, still seems really shaken up. I'm like, buddy, you're in mommy and daddy's bed. You're safe now. It's fine. Let's go back to sleep. He's like, I know, but now he's staring at me from over there, a corner in my room. And this is just the beginning of a situation that went on for nearly a year.
After this point, every single night, her son is having nightmares. It is like impossible to get him to sleep in his room alone. It's more than that. Like, he won't go into his own room, period. Won't go into play, won't even go in to go get a toy that he has in there. He will not go in his room. And he's telling his parents around this time the same story over and over and over again.
And he's also telling us in vivid detail the same story every single night, that he is seeing something crawl out of his closet and stand by his window, which is right next to his bed, and it's staring at him like this. And he says it's trying to eat him.
Yeah, when she made that face, it just left me with such a sense of unease, because I can only imagine, like, her doing it was scary, but imagine a child doing that, and her son specifically saying, oh my god, it gives me chills, I'm seeing this thing crawl out of my closet and stand next to my bed every single night looking like that. Anyway, this goes on for months and months and months and months. A couple of things happen around this time. Kayla has some leftover holy water from her son's baptism, and so she uses it around his room. She creates like a barrier around his bed, and surprisingly, he actually does get better sleep. However, her youngest son, who is just a little baby, starts waking up in the night screaming as if absolutely terrified by something. When Kayla wants to take her older son to preschool, he doesn't want to go to school. And this is weird because normally he really enjoys school. He gets excited about it. And he says, I'm not going to school unless you promise me you will stay with my baby brother all day. You cannot leave him alone. And his mom, Kayla, is just like, yeah, of course, like, he's a baby, he's not going to be alone. But there was such conviction seemingly in her son's voice that she promises him, like, of course, I'm not going to leave your baby brother alone. And that's the only way that her son, her older son, will go to preschool. They contact a priest who specifically tells them that yes, dark entities can attach themselves to objects. Specifically, Kayla tells him about the doll and ends up giving him the doll to like dispose of properly. Now, this is where things get strange.
We end up contacting a priest, and he's telling us that sometimes dark spirits or evil things can attach themselves to objects. He's asking us, if we brought anything new into the house. I mentioned the doll. I mentioned that, people in my family have said creepy things have happened where this doll is surrounded, but I mean, I don't really know, So he does recommend me giving him the doll so that he can dispose of it properly. So we make arrangements to do that. And then he asked me if Lawson is calling this thing by any specific name. And I'm like, he is actually. He calls this thing Bow. And he goes, well, there is actually a demon. And I don't want to say his name because he told me that, names hold power. But there is a powerful demon and his name is Baal. And he has like a thing for firstborn male children, all of this stuff. And it creeped me out so bad. We get rid of the doll. We pass the doll off to the priest. He gives us some very specific instructions on very specific things to say and do around our house. He has us open a Bible to a very specific passage and then place this open Bible in the closet and leave it there. And eventually things do calm down. He starts sleeping a little better at night. He's not talking about it every day. But even still to this day, if things have gotten better, he doesn't mention it. But he still won't sleep in that room without somebody with him. He's nearly 7. He's just turned 7 at this point and wants somebody still to sleep in bed with him and help him fall asleep. And if you even mention the name Bow or Baal, he freaks out.
Now, that's weird. That's really, really, really weird that her son is calling it by this name that he's almost definitely never heard before. And it sounds really similar to this like demonic name, specifically that the priest is talking about. But it gets even weirder because Kayla had taken a photo of her husband and their son on their baby monitor, just while her husband was in the room with him, trying to like settle him after one of his many nightmares. And she didn't notice it until after the fact. But in the photo, you could see almost what looked like the shadow of a hand or like a claw holding onto her husband's shoulder as he holds on to her son's hand. In looking at the photo, man, I thought the first time I saw it, it was him with his own arm wrapped around himself, but it's not. It looks like there is a hand on his shoulder, clear as day. And I know it's grainy, maybe it could be something else, but this story as a whole, y'all know what I say it every single time I make a video like this. Kids know. They just know. They know when something paranormal is happening and they know when it's not good. And I think that the fact that this thing like started off with her oldest son was being really weird to him, and then like literally the night that she puts holy water around her older son's bed, her youngest son starts being tormented in his sleep by something. And I think that her youngest would have been like too old to describe anything at that time, but I don't know. That's just very, very, very strange timing. Believe kids and believe pets when they see something spooky, man. They know better than we do. Then we have a TikTok from the user thegoldenmirrors. This one is like a little spiritual, a little witchy, right up my alley, so hopefully it's up yours. Also, in looking at this video of this poster, she and I have like the same haircut. Right now this is a wig, but underneath this I have the cutest little pixie. Anyway, this poster, her name is Meg. One weekend her friend is having a bachelorette party at a literal cabin in the woods, and the minute she said that I was like, oh, this is not gonna be good. So Meg is on her way to this bachelorette party when suddenly she gets this overwhelming feeling that she needs to turn around, go back to her house, and go pick up cleansing tools. Think like tools to cleanse a space spiritually. She walks in the door, her husband's like, did you not just leave? She's like, had to go to the bathroom, didn't feel like using a gas station. She's lying. She doesn't want him to know that she got this weird feeling of like, something might need like a little bit of spiritual protection at this cabin. She says it was a pretty pleasant drive, just a handful of hours, but specifically when you are on your way to this house, there's like a little bit under an hour's worth of just plain forest. Nothing but forest as far as the eye can see. And Meg pulls up to the house and immediately she just has this dark, sinking feeling in her gut. She walks in, her friends see her, and they're like, hey. She's like, hey. And it kind of just seems like everybody knows that something feels a little bit off here.
As soon as I pull up into the garage, I immediately just have this overwhelmingly heavy feeling that I really can't explain. 2 other people had arrived. They were there taking care of a lot of the organizational details. And I walked in and my 2 friends are standing in the kitchen here and here. These are pictures of the property. And I walk in and automatically, just with my sensitivities, I am like, there is something up there that is funky and I don't like it and I don't want to go near it. I feel like I am being stared at and it is highly dark, highly uncomfortable. And so my 2 friends in the kitchen are like, hey Meg, how's it going? We're glad you're here. I'm like, yeah, how are you guys doing? They're like, we're great. And I'm like, yeah, other than the thing that's up those stairs that's been staring at you the whole time. And they were like, oh my God, we were waiting for you to get here because we just had such a weird feeling and we're freaked out and we wanted to know what you thought, because they know I've got like sensitivities or whatever. I walked up the stairs and I got to about this spot right here and I stopped because I literally felt like an energetic wall, like do not go any further. My friend said, that's really weird. That's literally as far as we went to before you got here. And we were, they were just checking out the house and they went up into that weird little loft attic area and they were like, nope, no further. This is the top of the stairs right here. And if you look way down in this loft area, there's a little door with a crawl space and it was shut when we got there. As people started arriving, we were having fun joking, and one of the women went up there and we were talking about how creepy it was, and she said, was the door open when you guys went up there? The crawl space door had been opened and none of us had been up there.
Now, this is weird. There's a bunch of weird things going on, but primarily it seems like, just to be frank, the vibes were very off in this home. So much so that it's the middle of the night and Meg is like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I feel like I need to get in my car and go home. But something was telling her, you have to stay here and maintain a spiritual barrier. So she goes to sleep and she has the weirdest dream.
I had a dream when I eventually fell asleep that the entire property was surrounded by fire and the fire couldn't penetrate this weird line that we were all trying to hold. So I was like, fine, okay, I guess I will stay in this freaky ass house. The next morning, we're all hanging out on the balcony and talking, having breakfast, having coffee, and people start to share their experiences. People were touched. People staying in the upstairs bedroom in the bunk beds had water dripped onto their faces coming out of nowhere, and there were no leaks in the ceiling. It wasn't raining that weekend. Later that day, when most of the crew was playing yard games, like down here in the grass, one of the women was hanging out over here, and there was a deck of cards that literally got blown, and the cards were like flung into her face. I have no idea how that happened.
This is so weird. This entire experience is so strange. Meg is like, I don't feel right about this. I have this overwhelming feeling that I need to leave. She literally decides to go to the gas station, and I'm assuming that that's pretty far away since it's such a long stretch of woods before you even get to this little cabin in the woods. She goes to a gas station. She's like, am I just feeling like this because something's in the air? Is it me? The minute she's out of the house, the minute she's like away from it, she feels fine. People in the house are being affected, like their moods were just off. Like nobody was quite themselves. But something I thought was really interesting is that Meg said that what she was picking up on in like the attic area, the loft area, was not human and had never been human.
What I was picking up on primarily that kind of like lived in that upstairs loft area was something that was not nor had ever been human. This sounds really crazy because I've had run-ins with some really, really dark, start with a D word kind of entities. This wasn't even that. It almost felt like not from here, if you catch my drift. But it was, what I saw in my mind's eye was almost like a spidery looking thing. And it's interesting because another woman who was there told me that they saw a spidery looking image of this big nasty thing like crawl from up in this main area down the stairs into the loft area where we were sleeping.
When she said like not from here, I don't really know what that's implying, I guess, but it just made me feel so uncomfortable. I don't know why, but like the minute she said that, I just got full body chills. Anyway, the safe rooms in this house will change throughout the day. As time passes, like certain rooms that would be calm are just like no longer safe areas in the house. The activity will be there as well. Nobody wants to sleep. There are people, including Meg, staying up in this house until 4 in the morning just talking to each other because they don't want to sleep. Some of the other people on this trip also say that they were picking up on the energy of an older man, which Meg says that wasn't really what she was getting. Anyway, they've been keeping all of this away from the bride. The bride isn't having any activity happen to her, which is a good thing during her own bachelorette party. However, as they're all sitting at breakfast one day, just kind of like talking about their experiences so far, something happens that quite literally makes them get up and leave in the middle of their meal.
By the last morning, I'll never forget, one of my friends had set up a beautiful create your own crepe kind of buffet line, and we were all sitting down around at breakfast, trying to eat and just feeling so uncomfortable, ready to get the heck out of there. Someone said, "So you picking up on anything, Megan?" And it's interesting because at that moment I felt just this overwhelming cloud, almost like darkness from every angle just starting to swoop in. And I said, I think it's time to go. The way everybody collectively pushed back from this table and popped up and got up and grabbed their stuff and started hauling ass out of there, it was like a scene in a movie. Other guests had weird experiences. I checked the book, paused to read.
Now, there are like some logbook entries as well that Meg shows here. This one reads, these people stayed here in 2019. There were only 6 of us and it was a little creepy, but we had the best dance party and snow fell and we wouldn't have it any other way. But here's a weird one. This one happened in what looked like 2020, if I'm reading that correctly. From this person, at around 1:45 a.m., a small clicking noise was briefly heard by one of our guests. It was shrugged off as some vermin crossing through the beams. The clicking continued through the night and into the early morning hours until an apparition appeared in the form of a former country western star, George the Possum No-Show Jones. We all gasped in amazement as he began to tell a story about former inhabitants of the dwelling. And just as we were expecting a finale to the story, he shifted into an entire family of squirrels, said farewell, and scampered through the wall, leaving behind a tiny pile of ashes. We heard a faint voice following saying, "I love you more than," it looks like more than you know, but it's like covered up by the writing here. And also Meg says that she's pretty sure this was just exaggerated. This probably was not an apparition of a country star. Anyway, so they get out of the house. And the bride's husband-to-be and all of his friends were actually also having their stag party just down the road, like in the same area. They had heard little whispers and rumors of what was going on in the house. They decide they're gonna come and check it out. They're gonna kick this ghost's butt, and they're going to make sure that all of the girls are happy and okay and safe. Like, just stay, eat your breakfast, whatever. And Meg tells them no. Nobody is going in there.
The husband-to-be was actually having his stag party down the road, and they came over because they heard whispers and rumors about what was happening to us that weekend, and they were like, oh yeah, we're gonna run in and we're gonna take care of it. When they saw the look on our faces and they heard me say absolutely nobody's going into that house, they decided not to go in. I got in my car and was completely silent and white-knuckled my grip on the steering wheel until the tree line broke about an hour later and I was getting closer to home. I burst into tears and started sobbing because up until that point, I had never faced anything that dark or malevolent in my life. A few of us called each other after to process what had happened. It was wild.
Yeah, it sounds like Meg specifically is a very like intuitive person. I mean, she said that herself. She's very, very sensitive to spirit, but like, it seems like she might have had a better understanding or grasp on whatever this thing was. It seems like it was affecting people very differently, but all around quite negatively. But it's so curious why the bride wasn't feeling anything. Meg did say she was like a very spiritually protected person, the bride. So maybe that was it. I'm glad that she didn't have anything scary happen to her. But I'm so curious about this location. It's not safe to like put out where it is, but I'm also just like, where is this place? I don't think I would go. I don't think like with this explanation, this is not like, oh, a door slammed in the night. Oh, some lights turned on by themselves. Like this is terrifying, but I'm still just like, where is it? Where is it? Don't tell me, but where is it? Finally, we have a TikTok from this user. I don't know how to say their name. Is it thatweirddlgirl? Is it thatweirddlgirl? I don't know. I'm gonna be referring to them as our poster. This is the finale of this video for a reason. Y'all know I make these videos really frequently. I have to watch a lot of TikToks. I watch a lot of videos. And usually it's like a couple of times that I pass through them. I watch them way more in editing than I do on my initial pass-throughs. This video, I watched on repeat for no less than an hour. I'm not kidding you. I sat there with my jaw wide open listening to this again and again and again. There is just something about this story. This takes place about 21 years ago when the poster and the father of her children were still together. Now, the father of her kids has this house that has been passed down in his family for generations and generations and generations. It's this really beautiful home, 2 stories, tons of acreage. And the family says, hey, you guys are just starting out. You're a new, fresh, young family. Number one, 21 years ago, how? This person looks 21. Anyways, they give them a reduced rate on this house. They say you can move in, you can live here while you get on your feet. And also it comes with a little bit of furniture. They're moving in and it's partially furnished. The poster said nothing crazy had happened until this point. Like maybe a couple of things that could always be blamed on something else, but nothing crazy happened. But I want you to hear this part. Like, cause this part was what really sold me. This is why I listened to this TikTok on repeat for an hour.
New Year's night was a culmination of I have no idea, but when I tell you me and the father of my children can't even agree on like what color the sky is half the time, I could call that man right now and he will tell you that this is gospel spoken in a pulpit. Do you understand? That's where we're at.
That just sold me. I was listening, don't get me wrong. I usually will listen to these kinds of stories and like clean my room or something or do my makeup. I heard her say that and I was sad. I was at attention. I was ready for class. So it's New Year's Eve and this poster and her husband, they're kind of in a small town in Virginia, and for New Year's, all they're gonna do is just go down to a neighbor's house and go to like what seems like a little party. They get a babysitter, they go out to this party, and this is where this all begins.
So, went down there, hang out, ate, did all the things that's after midnight. What do you do in rural Virginia? Nothing. There's nothing to do. We were like, let's just take a loop around the bend. We go past the house, just look, everything's quiet, calm, and collected. We do our loop around the bend. Takes us about 15 minutes, if that. As we're approaching the house, what cuts through the dark is our upstairs light. And we're like, what the hell? We know grandma is not going to be in our home at no 1, 2 o'clock in the morning unless it's an emergency or someone's in my house. So we get to the house, we pull in the driveway, every single light is on in my home. And there is a music emitting from my house that I didn't know my house could make music this loud. Continue. So I send him in. We notice right off the bat, we don't see any windows open, and we have to use our keys to get in. Neither the back nor the front door were unlocked or open. So we had to use the lock. He comes in and gives me a little cordless phone, you know, because back then didn't have cell phone. If they did, I was broke. We didn't have one. So I'm saying on front porch with a cordless phone. I watched him go through the rooms cutting stuff off. The music is still going, and I'm just sitting out here like, oh no.
And every single light is on, and music is playing. Unfamiliar music. All the doors are still locked. Nobody would have done this.
And next thing you know, I hear this man holler at me in a way that is not like, it's terror and fear. It's something I still to this day have never heard him be this way. But he was, please get in here. Please get in here now. You have to see this. And it was such urgency and fear. I'll just go. And with everything in me telling not to, I just go because I hear it in his voice. And when I walk into my room, there was a piece of furniture that I presumed was like this beautiful tabletop that she had left a pretty lamp on. And she said we could use it. And so I had some books up there, and knickknacks was this cute little thing that I used in the bedroom. Everything was cleared off of this and stacked extremely neat in a corner. This tabletop piece is now in the middle of our room that flips up. He did know that this did this. I didn't. And revealed a record player and a radio that is blasting music me or him nor would never listen to. And the part of this that is the most chilling, if you haven't got there, is the cord. The cord to this piece was stretched so tight into an electrical socket you could almost flick the cord. And me and him are just in silence, stunned.
By the way, if you're wondering about the babysitter, I was wrong in the beginning. They did not leave the kids at home with a babysitter. The children's grandmother lived on this property, right across the street. So all that happened was they took their child and they took them over to grandma's. So nobody was there. If you're wondering, okay, well, if the kids were home with a babysitter, how did that happen? So anyways, this happens. But the night is not over yet.
So we unplug it, we get everything back in the room, and it's just this eerie silence. And if that wasn't enough, we just kind of in unison sit on the bed, and the next thing you know, as it stills, the bed just does this very, that was it. I slept in the truck, moved out the next day. And when I can't say this enough, we don't agree on anything but this story.
I think that getting the hell out of Dodge when you have little kids like that is the smartest thing you can do. I think it's crazy that seemingly nothing happened until then. I mean, no, nothing worth noting anyways. Nothing that was big enough to say, okay, I think there's something going on in this house. That's just crazy to me. Just nothing. And then one night, it comes alive like Monster House. I don't know. Recently, you guys have been tagging me in some of the scariest true stories ever told on TikTok. There's been so many trends this year that encourage people to share scary stories, and it literally makes me so happy. It's becoming so popular that usually I have maybe 5, 6, 7 stories to share with you in a video, and today I have 12. And when I tell you every single one of these stories is absolutely terrifying, and according to the poster is entirely true, I mean it. These are some of the creepiest TikTok videos that I have seen in a long time. Starting off strong with our first video, this comes from TikTok user ashleeinc. Ashley kind of started a new TikTok story trend by asking the question,
tell me a story about a time that you know that you saw something, but you don't ever tell this story because you know that no one would ever believe you. I don't think I've ever told this story before because I would sound like an insane person, but I know it happened. I want to be creeped out. I just watched the video of the girl, the Lyft driver in New Orleans, who says she picked up a vampire. I want more stories like that, but I'll tell you mine.
Don't worry about the vampire thing. We'll circle back around to that. I'm telling you, people have been telling the craziest stories on TikTok recently. But Ashley kicks off this request for creepy videos with a story of her own. And her story occurs when she's just 7 years old. See, Ashley grew up in the Chicago area, in a little suburb of Chicago, just southwest of the city. And on Fridays, her parents would go out to go bowling. I think that's really cute. They would go out on a little bowling date. She had a babysitter named Maria, who was probably about 16 or 17 at this time, and her little sister was around 2. It's a night for the girls, and Ashley's in the kitchen by herself, while Maria and her little sister are downstairs. And Ashley just happens to be looking out the window when she sees something strange.
It's dusk. The sun is like pretty much set. And I see a black panther jump over the fence and come down, stand underneath the apple tree. It was so tall that its shoulders almost came up to the first set of branches. Jet black. Black fur. And we had a house cat, so I know what the house cat size is in relation to this thing. This thing was easily 6 or 7 times the size of our cat. So I start calling for Maria, like yelling at her to come up to the kitchen to see this black panther in our backyard. She was taking her time. My sister was crying and she was tending to her. I'm standing there mesmerized by this black panther, and it turns and it looks at me and it makes eye contact. And on its head, this thing was jet black, but on its head, it had a little patch of white fur just going right like this. And we just stare at each other for a good 5 seconds or so. I hear Maria stirring. She's coming into the kitchen. And as she's walking into the kitchen, the panther runs into the lake. I was like, there was a panther in our backyard. Maria's like, it was just a house cat. I'm like, no, it was a panther.
So the night goes on, and Ashley's positive of what she saw. She saw it clear as day. It was a panther going into the lake. And alarmingly, not too long after that, the doorbell rings. And this part of the story just gives me chills.
I'm in bed. I hear her doorbell. It's probably close to like 11 o'clock because my parents were still out. They usually came home around like 1 in the morning. So naturally I hear the doorbell ring. I get out of bed. I go to the top of the stairs and I see Maria answering the door. And I'm like creeping on the stairs, and she lets this man in, and he's wearing all black. He was like very pale. And I hear him tell her basically that he was a traveler who like lost his way and he needed to use our phone. It was the 90s, so people didn't have like cell phones easily accessible, so he just wanted to use like our landline. So Maria lets him in. He's using the phone. It's very muffled. I can't hear what he's saying. I like remember the conversation, but I don't. That's where mine and this girl's stories are similar. So after he makes his phone call, he's like turning to leave. He walks past the stairs. He looks up at me because I'm still sitting at the top of it, and I see on his head he has a little patch of white hair in the same spot that the panther had. And he looks at Maria and he goes, "Thank you for your help. It's really easy to get lost in the shadows." And he leaves. Now this man shook me. Like I could not sleep that night. So when my parents got home, I was still awake in bed. I ran downstairs. I told them all about the panther. They chalked it up to an overactive imagination, and they were like, it was just a house cat. Like, you're just letting your imagination get the best of you. And I told them about the man. They were pissed. They were fuming. They fired Maria for letting a strange man into our house, as they should have. But yeah, I don't know. I've looked into it. There have been tons of Black Panther sightings all over Illinois, close to Chicago, and yet the Department of Natural Resources maintains that there are no Black Panthers in Illinois.
That man basically looked like this panther had that same like patch of white. And a lot of the comments were saying like he was making sure you saw him, making sure you knew it was him. Now, after this video totally blew up, there were so many people commenting, and I was very pleased to see that this comment section was not full of naysayers, not full of people like, you were a kid, you don't know what you saw. It was a lot of people like, this sounds real. It sounds like you knew exactly what you saw. The fact that he came to your door, like that is just so creepy. This is very clearly something that wanted you to know what it was. Or not what it was, but like wanted her to see it. A lot of people were saying that this was a shapeshifter. And Ashley receives an email from someone who knows exactly the area she's talking about because they had a similar experience.
I got this email this morning and it gave me chills. Okay, so this person emails me and they said, "Hey, I just heard about your Black Panther sighting in the Chicago suburbs back in the 90s and I couldn't believe it. Did this happen to be in Lansing at the lake near Potts Park?" It was. I actually had a similar experience around the same time in the same area. I was a teenager at the time and living with my parents on the lake. I don't have TikTok. My ex-girlfriend from the time reached out on Facebook Messenger to send me your video. We haven't talked in years. I had to reach out to you to tell my story because my story is crazy similar. I was sitting in the yard by the lake with my then girlfriend when we noticed a shadowy figure moving along the shoreline. It wasn't quite nighttime, but dark enough where we couldn't see far into the distance. She pointed it out first, and we initially thought it was a man, but the figure seemed to morph and shift, its form changing between a large, dark beast or crouching man. It's hard to explain what it was, as there aren't really words that would do it justice what we saw. Before I could really comprehend what I was seeing, the man-cat slipped silently into the water, vanishing without a trace. The air around me felt charged with an eerie energy, and I remember having a goosebumps, and the hair on my arms was standing on end. It was one of the most unsettling and mysterious things I've ever witnessed. I haven't really told anyone about it because the entire time I just chalked it up to my mind playing tricks on me, and my then girlfriend and I convinced each other it was just a weird man going swimming. I don't really know. After that encounter, I sought out some answers and spoke to our old neighbor who lived near the lake. He was always kind of into weird stuff and spent a lot of time sitting in his yard and watching the water. He wasn't a professional, but he was a local historian of sorts and knew much about the area's lore. He told me about the legend of the shapeshifter that had roamed these lands for centuries. According to him, this being could take on various forms, often appearing as a panther, a wolf, or a man who could disappear into the water. The old man said the shapeshifter was believed to be a guardian of the area, sometimes a protector, and other times he'd show up when there was change coming. He said the last time he remembers somebody telling him about him showing up was when they built a new development of houses on the lake in the late 1980s. He advised me to always be cautious and trust my instincts when encountering such beings. He shared an anecdote about how the area was originally settled. Long before modern civilization took root, indigenous tribes lived here, coexisting with the land and its mystical inhabitants. They respected the shapeshifter, viewing it as a spirit of the earth. When the first European settlers arrived, they ignored the warnings and built too close to the sacred spots. Strange phenomena like animals and crops disappearing and eerie sightings bothered them until they learned to respect the land's ancient mysteries. The old man believed that the shapeshifters still watch over these lands, reminding those who live there to honor the past and tread carefully. And he says, I'm not sure what to make of it all, but I can't help but feel that our stories are connected in some way. Maybe there's a deeper mystery at play here. Stay safe out there and let me know if you hear anything else about the area from others. Best, Brent. So I'm like, there's no way. So I start Googling. The first thing I type in is Native American tribes in Lansing, Illinois, and this comes up. Through the center of Lansing, running east-west, is a 25-foot-high elongated ridge of sand and gravel deposits that was once a great prominent Indian trail that is now known as Ridge Road. Here's a map of the area, okay? So this was the lake. This is Ridge Road. So this is how far we are. So then I type in what native tribes lived in the area, and this tribe comes up. Oh my God. They did ceremonies to appease the underworld panther and maintain balance. There's a myth of the underworld panther. In my story, I talked about how the panther disappeared in the water, and look at this journal entry. You can pause to read this if you'd like. But yeah, the underwater panther is apparently a whole thing, so.
I find it very interesting also that underwater panthers are a thing. I mean, not like a thing in the animal kingdom, but they are a thing in mythology. So did she see some kind of mythical creature that shapeshifted into a human to come into her home just to taunt her? Maybe? But I'm gonna be real honest with you, I don't know what she saw. Should we go ahead and talk about vampires also while we're here? People have been making videos about vampire experiences, specifically in New Orleans. And I think one of the most fascinating, terrifying viral ones comes from TikTok user Essence Creations 27, who talks about one New Year's Eve that she was driving for Lyft, where she swears she picked up a group of vampires.
This New Year's Eve, I was driving Lyft and I picked up an order, and it ended up being at like a place that used to be a church, but it wasn't a church anymore, obviously, if you saw the festivities that was going on. There were like people with cloaks and like dark hair and heavy eyeliner, and there was like a red glow from the building coming out. 4 guys got into my car. As soon as they got into the car, I felt a chill. And yes, it was winter, but it was a different kind of chill. I turned around and looked at them, and I immediately knew they were vampires. And it wasn't even just like a thought, it was more so a knowing. Before they got into the car, I was thinking like maybe they were devil worshippers, because I had seen like a goat head and like the typical symbols that you see associated with that. But I was like, no, these are vampires.
So in terms of how they looked, they were apparently very, very pale. Pale in a way where the poster says there was no like warmth to their skin. It didn't look like a normal kind of pale. And there were 2 brunettes, 2 blondes, and they had incredibly light, piercing blue eyes. And she's not even sure why, but at this point she starts to panic.
Immediately, I start to panic. My heart is racing. I'm feeling like, is it too late to reject the call? Like, can I even ask them to leave the vehicle? And then I started thinking, okay, if I am panicking and my blood pressure is rising, then I'm like pushing more blood through my veins, which may mean that I may seem more appetizing to them. This is all stuff that's going through my mind. The man behind me, the blonde, who was like in the middle, touches my shoulder, and immediately it's like somebody poured warm honey over me. Like, that is the calm just spreading down my body. It was like immediately I felt relaxed, almost like I was in a trance, kind of there, but like watching myself. I can't even really describe it. And I knew at that moment that I wasn't necessarily in danger.
That is so eerie. Like, suddenly she feels this overwhelming peace and calm come over her. But then one of them says that they need to ask her a question.
So he's like, okay, well, we have 2 separate cars. How would you group us together? Who should ride with who? So I'm like, I look back at them, and they're smiling and they're kind of giggling. Now, their teeth don't look like regular teeth, but they don't look like the typical vampire teeth either. But they definitely did not look like human teeth. Their canines were a little bit more pronounced, but not in a dramatic, fake way. I can't even freaking describe it. And actually, if I had to describe them, to sketch them out right now, I couldn't even, because it's like they're a memory, but not like a typical memory, like a memory behind a memory. I knew it. I'm like, you're vampires. Yes. I heard the answer in my head. No, I'm looking at them through the, because I'm like, if they lunge for the jugular, I'm gonna crash us all. But I grouped the opposite hair colors together. And the guy said, well, why'd you do that? I said, I don't know, it just felt right. He said, excellent choice. He took out his phone and he's like, I'm gonna start my car now. And I'm like, you can start your car from my car? And he's like, yeah, but we like you. You'll get home safe. Good. Like, you'll get home safe tonight. They got out and they gave me my biggest tip of the night. You would think that would have been my last ride for the night, but no, I kept going. I made it home, and I didn't tell any other person about this story because, like, are you supposed to share vampire stories? I don't know. However, I just did. So just know that there are other beings in this world besides us.
Now, so many people would obviously say that she just had a car full of goths. She just had a car full of alternative people going out on New Year's Eve. But there's so many strange elements to her story, like the guy touching her and suddenly she's just totally at peace. Also, her overwhelming panic out of nowhere. I'm sorry, but if you're driving like for a rideshare app on a regular basis, I feel like you probably don't get super spooked by, like, I don't know, just a normal set of passengers getting into your car. I truly think something a little funky was going on there. And this story was going so viral. People saying, like, have you heard about the Lyft driver in Chicago who encountered vampires? And then immediately sharing their own vampire story. It's been really, really, really fascinating being on vampire TikTok. But anyways, I had to share this story. It's terrifying. I'm really curious what you guys think about that one. On the heels of this, TikTok user hnnuhrose came out and made a little video of her own saying she's been on vampire TikTok and she has a scary story that she wants to tell. So Hannah works as an EMT and she gets a call one night that she would never forget.
Me and my 50-year-old Christian woman partner, who she does not believe in this stuff at all. We were taking this patient that was on a 5150 that was being extended. And so we took her to like a longer stay home, which I've never seen like a home like this in LA before. But it was basically like this wood house in Atwater Village. And the moment you pull up, it just looks like this wooden Victorian situation, like something you would see in a movie. Like if you've ever seen that movie Monster House as a kid, like that's what it looked like. And the vibes were just like not right as soon as you got out. But I was like, you know, whatever.
This patient isn't doing well to begin with. But when they get to this longer stay home that she described, the patient starts freaking out.
We get out and she's like, please don't leave me here. Like, I can see things, and like, she's like sobbing to me. She's like, please don't leave me here. But like, I have to, you know, like, as much as I don't want to leave you here because it is f***ing haunted, you can tell. What am I supposed to do? I'd be kidnapping you. Anyways, we get inside. We can barely get her freaking gurney in there. And we're taking her up to the room. The whole time she's just sobbing, this poor girl. And my partner just kind of attributed that to that obviously she didn't want to be in another mental health institution.
After the patient was taken to the room, Hannah and her partner start getting ready to leave. They fold up their gurney and they get into the elevator. But it's when they're in the elevator that something really, really strange happens.
We close the elevator and it says 3, 2, 1, and those are the only buttons. So we click 1. And we stop at 1, the doors don't open, and then it just keeps going down. And I'm like, what the f? And the doors open, pitch black. It's pitch black. This is obviously the basement, right? It's pitch black, and you can't really hear anything except like this growling, and not like that, but like growling of like a machine or something. And it's just like really eerie, and the vibes, the energy was just sucked out. Like, it's like negative energy. I'm pushing the button and she's looking at me like, Hannah, please push the button. And I was like, I'm trying, like, and I'm pushing 1, I'm pushing 2, I'm pushing everything just so we could go up. And I'm not even shitting you when I say this. I say this with my whole heart. This is the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. We heard footsteps. Slow footsteps. Like a heeled man's shoe walking from the back of the room to the front of the room, but it's pitch black. You can't see anything. Slow footsteps. And she looks at me and I was like, and we're both pushing buttons. We're pushing the emergency button. We're trying to manually close it because something was wrong. They are about to like come in the elevator light. The footsteps are about to come in the elevator light. And finally it closes.
They get back up. They're terrified. They tell the security guard, we just went down to the basement. Something ain't right with your elevator. And they say, there is no basement.
And we look at the security guard and I'm like, there is something wrong with your elevator. It took us to the basement. He said, we don't have a basement here, ma'am. We get back in the ambulance. We just had to sit there. We couldn't even clean the gurney for a minute. Like, we had to sit there. And she said, what the f***? This poor woman, she doesn't cuss. She's a good Christian woman. And we just never talked about it.
It's so clear that this story genuinely freaks this poster out. And honestly, you guys, some of the scariest paranormal stories I've ever heard come from EMT workers. Whatever that thing was sounds sinister. And a lot of people were saying it's kind of even scarier that the woman that they took to that institution, obviously she was not doing very well, but the fact that she said something's not right here, and then immediately those two experienced that, and the woman had to stay there, really, really scary. And I hope that patient is okay today. This video comes from Isabel Riley, and it is a story unlike anything I've ever heard, with a photo of a real ghost to match. Also, Isabel tagged me in her TikTok. Thank you so much. I love hearing you guys' stories, so if you ever tell a scary story on TikTok, tag me. So Isabel was at a company get-together with like the CEOs and the owners of the company that she works for, when suddenly one of them looks at them and says, do you guys want to see an insane ghost picture?
He begins to tell us that he was in New Orleans at a restaurant called Antoine's. New Orleans, first of all, super haunted city. If you know, you know. And Antoine's is one of the oldest restaurants in the city, one of the oldest restaurants, I believe, in America. It has a lot of history. It used to be a jail. It is a really well-established place, has been around forever. So he's dining at this restaurant and he's offered a tour of the wine cellar. The wine cellar is huge, has thousands of bottles of wine, probably worth millions of dollars. So he's taking a tour of the wine cellar, he's taking pictures. There's this guy in the wine cellar on a laptop who is apparently at auction buying more rare wine for the collection. My CEO takes pictures of this guy on his laptop, doesn't think anything of it, he doesn't see anything, leaves the restaurant, calls it a day. The next morning, he's looking through the photos and notices something in one of the pictures that he took in the wine cellar. I'm going to upload the first picture that he took. There's nothing that immediately jumped out in this picture, but I want to give a baseline. So this is the first picture that he showed me from the wine cellar. You can see this guy who is on his laptop at auction doing whatever. And here is the next picture that he took. So we all see that. That is a full body apparition. It looks like a woman in this like black Victorian dress. And when I was showed this, I genuinely had full body chills. That is insane. So he showed that to me. And keep in mind, he is showing me pictures from his camera roll. Like in sequence, time stamped. Those two pictures were like a minute apart, if that, like probably seconds apart. I see all the other pictures from his trip. This is not edited. He's also not the kind of person who would do anything like that. Like he hasn't posted this anywhere. It's just a story that he was telling us. I've never seen anything like this.
That is one of the scariest images I've ever seen, and I completely believe that is a real ghost. The photo without the ghost in it looks exactly like the one with her in it. Like nobody is moving. This woman doesn't even look like she's from modern times. Like the way that she's dressed, she just doesn't look like she belongs in the year 2024 or whatever year this was taken. Like if I saw this and I didn't have the context of that story, I would assume it was maybe somebody who worked in costume at this restaurant. And it's such a clear image, of course, like I'm sure so many people will say that it's a hoax, but I really believe this story. I'm telling you, I've only been to New Orleans once, and it's some of the strangest energy I've ever experienced in my life. There is something creepy about that city that I've only ever seen rivaled by Savannah, Georgia. Literally one of those haunted cities in the US. So this story really freaked me out. Isabel, thanks again for tagging me. What the heck do you guys think this was? A woman named Kristyrobinett has recounted her story with what she believes is a vampire. Many decades ago, Kristy lost her job. And she says it was around 30 years ago because she had just had her baby girl. And she got a job interview at a local business. She goes in to this interview and immediately she just felt there was something off about the owner of this business that she was interviewing with.
I went to this interview and I immediately felt something odd with the owner of this business. There was something so mesmerizing about him. He wasn't good looking, but he was good looking. It's hard to explain. Like there was just something strange about him and he just felt almost hypnotic. And he said, I'm interviewing for a couple more people and I'll give you a call in a couple days and let you know if you get the job. Okay. I did get the job. A couple days later, he gave me a phone call and he said, I am offering you this job at this pay. And it wasn't bad. The hours weren't bad. The pay wasn't bad. And I said, let me think about it. I had another offer on the table. And he said, please let me know by tomorrow. And I'm like, understood.
So at this point, she calls her mother, who she says was very, very intuitive. And all she tells her mom is, hey, I got an offer for this job. And immediately her mother says, do not take that job.
I told her and I'm like, I got this job offer and I didn't even tell her a lot of like the creepiness that this guy kind of gave me. And she's like, Kristy, I have a really bad feeling. Do not accept this job. Do not accept the job. I'm telling you right now, something's not right. Do not accept this job. Now, this is a business that was in the person's family for a long time. It wasn't like a starter company. This person was kind of known in the community. My mom didn't know him, but so it was a substantial, real job. And I'm like, Mom, I don't understand. I need a job. She's like, you're going to get a job offer from that other place that you interviewed for. Just stick it out. Tell this guy no and accept the other job once it comes. And I'm like, this job was actually, it was pretty good.
She decides she's going to listen to her mom. Something doesn't feel right here. Her mom has basically confirmed it for her without even knowing like some of the creepy aspects of this interview, just some of the things that Kristy was feeling. So Kristy calls up the guy the next day and she's like, hey, really appreciate the job offer. I can't take the job. And this man does not respond with, okay, best of luck. You know, a normal thing an employer might say when turned down. He says, I will double your pay.
Really honored, but I'm declining the job offer, and thank you very much for your time. And he's like, I will double your pay. I will double your pay. Now, it already was good pay, but double the pay was a lot of pay. And I'm like, again, something felt really off. And I'm like, sir, I'm so sorry. I'm going to decline. And he's like, I'm going to check with you in a couple days. And there was just something very ominous about the way that he said that. And that night, I ended up having a dream with him in it. And it was very vampire-ish, is the only way that I can describe it. And the business that he was in also spoke volumes for that. So a couple days later, he called me. And I said, again, sir, I've accepted another job. And I did not tell him with whom. And he's like, I will triple your salary. And I'm like, I'm sorry, sir. And he said, I can tell that you are very psychic. And I can tell that you know who I am and what I am. And I think it would behoove you to take this job. So I told him again, no, thank you. And he said, okay.
She ends up taking a job at a cabinet store. She's working as an office manager. And during this time, she keeps seeing the vampire man in her dreams until suddenly he shows up at her new place of work.
Well, guess who showed up at the kitchen store the second day that I started? Yeah, this guy. And it's like he knew that I was going to be there. He's like, hi, Kristy. And I'm like, excuse me, what are you stalking me? Like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm ordering a new kitchen for the business. Like, it was nothing. And he continued to come in my dreams. About a year later, I ended up taking a job at a fireplace store as an office manager. A couple days into that, this gentleman walks in and says, I need a new fireplace for my business. Now, I'm not going to say everything about the business and everything about him, but you might be able to figure it out with a clue. And that is, he lived above the business. That's all I'm going to say. So he's like, yep, I need a fireplace. And I'm like, sir, I don't understand why you're here. And he continued every time. He's like, would you like to work with me? I'm like, nope, I'm good. I'm good.
Kristy worked at this fireplace store for a couple of years, and the vampire man would call sometimes to have his fireplace service. Kristy told her boss about it. Her boss is like, I'm gonna send you out there with the tech as like a joke. And she's like, no. She said there's just something strange about this person, something strange about this man. He's like immortal. That's just the weird feeling she gets from him. She says even if you look at the family lineage, it's like he's been here before. A couple of years pass. She quits the fireplace store. She goes to work for a school district. And guess who shows up?
I ended up quitting a couple of years after that, and I worked for a school district. And guess who showed up? At the admin office. Him. And in the meantime, he's still coming in my dreams. And every once in a while, he's still calling me and asking me if I want a job. And no, my mom had passed away. I'd gotten a divorce. I mean, we are eons into this. And I ended up running into him at a store. And he, like, do you remember everybody you interviewed like one time? Because he either has a really crazy memory or it wasn't like a stalker. He just wasn't. That wasn't the case. It's just, again, it was very vampiristic. Is that a word? And so I ran into him And he's like, "Hi, Christy." And again, he's like, "How are you doing?" And it was just very kind of Norman Bates creepy.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, Christy now works as a psychic medium. She seems like somebody who's very sensitive to spirit. Her mother was very intuitive, and she just fell into this line of work. And it was when she was working on a case with who she claims is a competitor of his that she got a bit of closure, maybe information, I don't know, nightmare fuel with this story.
In the job that I'm in now, I'm a professional psychic medium. I ended up having to go to a competitor of his to work on a case. And we ended up talking about this gentleman and his business. And I didn't say anything, but the owner of this establishment went, just Christy, make sure you stay away from, because he's a vampire. And I didn't laugh, and she didn't laugh, and she knew I knew, and I knew she knew too. So vampires do exist, and they don't necessarily wear capes. Sometimes they wear business suits, and sometimes they invade your dreams. And I feel as if there's a possibility that my life at that time was a little bit crazy, and it was because of the psychic sort of like vampire energy that he was sending to me, because he was mad that I did not accept a job with him. I would love to tell you more, but I don't want to open up that can of bats.
The fact that this man just kept showing up, no matter where she ended up working, like he knew where she was. This is the days, also, she said, before AOL Instant Messenger even. Like, you couldn't keep up with people like that. But it was like he always knew just where to go to find her. So, creepy stalker or vampire? I genuinely don't know which is scarier. Sweetheart Alabama is a poster who worked on Bourbon Street in New Orleans for 12 years. And she wanted to weigh in on the supposed New Orleans vampire stories.
Well, I see vampires in New Orleans is trending. And as someone who lived in New Orleans for 12 years and worked on Bourbon Street almost every night of those 12 years, and was around a lot of darkness there, I can tell you, I met a lot of something. Vampires in particular. Anybody who told me they were a vampire? No. Did I meet the devil? Well, if you were around the early days of the House of Blues back in the day, you might know what I'm talking about. And I also met Michael the Archangel. Now, that's a story I've done before. If you want to hear it, let me know. But would it shock me if there was major supernatural and strange things going on? Have you ever been to New Orleans? No, not shocking. But I guess I never got the chance to meet someone who claimed to be a vampire. There are a lot of vampire fans there because of Anne Rice, and a lot of people who dress like vampires to look cool and to feel like they were, mysterious. But let me tell you something. The real people walking around New Orleans, they're a hell of a lot scarier.
Now, the TikTok comment said, "Girly pop, that's all well and good." Who did you say you met? Archangel Michael? Can we rewind it to that? And my girl, Sweetheart Alabama, did not just pull up with more information. She pulled up with literal receipts.
This was 1995 at the maiden voyage on Bourbon Street. In fact, I can tell you exactly when it was from his drink receipt. It was Saturday, November the 11th, 1995 at 8:27 p.m. when he walked in and got a drink. And that drink was a Heineken. Y'all, I remember so many things, so many details about meeting this person 29 years ago, a stranger. I've kept these for 29 years. He made such an impact on me. This is so crazy. I can't believe I am telling y'all this story. Okay, when he came in, I noticed him immediately. He sat down kind of in the middle of the room. The Maiden Voyage is a strip club, by the way, if you haven't caught on to that yet. I went over, said hello, introduced myself, asked if he wanted to dance. But no, he was so polite, and he just said no thank you. And I never did this. I just asked, well, can I sit down for a minute and, maybe hang out? He was already drinking his Heineken at the time. And we got into a conversation. And when I tell you, this man's eyes were mesmerizing, okay? At some point in the first few minutes, he says to me, I am the angel Michael.
So she's talking to this guy, and he says, I gotta tell you something. I'm the Archangel Michael. And she's like, okay, dude, like we got a weird one here. But she says that his actions, like the way that he presented himself, was not aligned with someone who has mental issues, although that's not really a look. She remembers the way he looks so distinctly, and it's not only her memory that she has to go off of here, because she has a piece of paper that he was writing and drawing on.
And we started talking about God and Jesus, and he wrote some notes, and he just grabbed the receipt to write some notes, okay? But I'm going to share those with you, but he was wearing white pants and a white shirt, not unusual necessarily in New Orleans, but even though it's November, not necessarily unusual. He had a boat captain's hat. Okay, but hang on a second. Instead of the wheel in the middle of the boat captain's hat, he had a sand dollar in the middle. He had a beautiful face, even though I wouldn't call him like attractive. He wasn't hot, like a hot guy. It wasn't that. He had a beautiful face, and he had curly blonde hair, like ringlet curly, and it was probably like that long.
At this point, this woman is still skeptical. She's still not quite sure what's going on here, but it kind of seems like she's stuck somewhere between disbelief and genuine skepticism.
He was showing the star here. Don't get freaked out. He was just writing a star because that was his symbol why he was drinking a Heineken. And he wrote also manifestation, and he wrote man/infestation, and then he wrote God, occult, and Satan. And we had a conversation about that. I don't remember all the details of that one. And then on the other side, he wrote top of change, in God we trust, like in I guess we were talking about money. And then he wrote about how to do Bible, ask a question of the Bible. I'm going to show you these, okay? Write down a question, say a prayer in faith for personal revelation through prayer, through the Bible, put your hand on the page and interpret the answer. Okay, I'll show you all of these. We had a pleasant conversation. I was just like, is this guy starting a cult? Like, I am so mesmerized by this guy. I get called onto stage, had to go back to work and do stuff. I look over at him occasionally, and there are girls everywhere, sitting all around him, just sitting talking. Like everybody, all the girls are just drawn to this guy. And I watched from afar and just thought, what am I doing? What am I doing? There's a crazy fool in here saying he's the Archangel Michael. And here I am just staring at him, and all the other girls are intrigued with him. Like, what is going on?
But she ends up asking him, why are you here? And I found this part of her story really eerie.
It was a skeptical question, and I asked him, why are you here? And I cannot tell you the answer. I just can't tell you. Like, I don't know why I can't tell you, but I can't tell you. But he told me, and I can't say it. Towards the end of the night, I guess, I see that he's about to leave. And just something in me, I had to go tell him bye. I couldn't let him leave without saying something. And so I ran over there and I said, Michael, if it's really you, put in a good word for me. And he smiled and said, you're in. And I don't know why. After 29 years, I can remember the look on his face and the feeling that I felt when he said that to me.
Weird, right? Like just that feeling she had. how it stuck with her all of these years later. Weird. Then she shows a close-up of the receipt.
So here is the note he wrote with man infestation, occult god, Satan. And this is the actual receipt that says top change in God we trust. And there's the address, 225 Bourbon Street, Maiden Voyage Limited. He had a beer. It was $6.25. And there's the date and the time. Also, no cameras or recording devices. This is the duplicate of the same receipt. And then this was what he wrote down to find the answer to a question in the Bible. So, there you go. That's the story.
Look, was that the Archangel Michael? I don't know. Most logic would point to no, of course. And a lot of people were saying in the comments, why would Archangel Michael like be at a bar, essentially? But I do think there's just some things in New Orleans you can't explain. If you've never been, it probably just sounds like a bunch of bullshit, but like there's just something about it that feels out of this world. For me, the entire time that I was in New Orleans, I didn't feel like I was in the United States. I didn't feel like I was on planet Earth. So was it the Archangel Michael? I don't know, but she met someone strange. The next video is kind of a quick one, but it comes from itsjaydenhills, who says that her mom talks to dead people. What a fun way to start a video.
My mom talks to dead people. And my dad died like 6 months ago, and we just got back from dinner and it was really significant. So quick background context, and you have to see this video. He wants his ashes scattered in some of his favorite places. One of those places is Disney World, for better or for worse. So we know we have to go back to Disney World. The people we were at dinner with have come to Disney with us when I was younger. Now they have kids of their own, and we just talked about doing this whole group trip to Disney World with their kids to scatter his ashes. Emotional, we're all crying. We get home, mom goes to the bathroom. She's sitting on the toilet, and she's like, someone's here, come here. So I walk into the bathroom, and this happens.
Dad, if this is you, can you flash one big time? One big time. Dad, if this is you. Did you see it?
Not a big time now.
Come on, flash bigger. Flash it stronger. There we go. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. If you heard the Disney conversation, okay? If you heard the Disney conversation, which I know you did, flash twice. Flash it twice, please.
Oh,
that was a good try. That was good.
Body chills.
I just think that's so beautiful. I really think that our loved ones are completely capable of giving us signs and talking to us and interacting with us on the day-to-day, and I'm sure that her mother was just so happy to have that confirmation from her dad. It was just really sweet, and yeah, that was a little palate cleanser of a story. Something still sad, don't get me wrong, you know, her dad being gone is sad, but also something really sweet. The next TikTok comes from Brennna, and this is a stitch in response to TikTok user Audacitii. And you may have seen at least part of this video before in a Scream stream. I kind of want to take back some of the things that I've said about it now that I've watched the video in its entirety with like the full context. Because when I watched the video, there is like a video of evidence in this story time. When I watched it initially, I was like, there's too much happening in this. This is very clearly a hoax. Like, I was very harsh on it. But hearing this story, I don't think I'm so sure anymore.
Okay, I have video footage of this. I will share it at the end. Nobody thinks it's real. Like, it seems like it's doctored footage, but it's not, I swear on my life. Basically, both my sister and my old roommate used to work at this like music school daycare center for kids in the Upper East Side. The music classes would happen upstairs, but downstairs in the basement there was this like daycare situation and you had to work down there. and they both hated being down there. And I'd been down there a few times too. It is really scary. Like, you know when you just get a feeling about a place? Like, that is the basement. It was horrible. They would both, like, hear voices when their co-teacher hadn't showed up yet, or, like, the cleaner would go downstairs and all the toys would be arranged in, like, a circle, and she'd be, like, in tears, being like, are you guys playing a prank on me? I seriously, like, I don't feel safe here. The kids would all say really creepy shit. Like, they'd say, like, there's a really, like, mean guy in, like, the tunnel, like, a little play tunnel thing, or, like, there's, like, someone mean over in, like, the dark corner of the basement. So when COVID hit, obviously no one was going into the daycare. It essentially shut down. But the owners installed cameras just in case, like, anything happened while they weren't there. And it picked up the most insane shit ever. It's a minute and a half long, so here you go.
Is some of the craziest paranormal footage I've ever seen. And again, I was really harsh on this video the first time I saw it because it just seems unbelievable. Let's call it what it is. It's a lot happening in this video. I don't know what it is. Listening to this story in its entirety, I don't know, just hearing Brennna talk a bit about the situation. Like, she said she had her roommate and her sister both work there, and their fear around the basement, the kids like seeing a creepy man, I think they said, at the end of the tunnel, like the little play tunnel. I don't know. I think this footage is absolutely terrifying, and I guess it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to fake. I really don't think that much has changed for me in terms of like the footage itself. It's still crazy. If it is doctored, I don't think Brennna knows that in any way. I just don't think she's lying. I also just like, I don't know. The footage freaks me out. I kind of think it's real. Eating my own words, because I'm telling you, the first time I saw that, I was like, there's no way. And it's still so unbelievable, but now I kind of think it might be real. I don't know. At the very least, I think Brenna's story is true, and this is a video for stories, so I'm just gonna let you guys tell me what you think about it. On to our final video of the night. Strawberrybagelbites captioned this video, "Why I Believe in Ghosts," as someone who works in hospice. I follow a TikToker named Nurse Hadley who talks a lot about her experiences with like the paranormal, the other side, the afterlife, and she is a hospice nurse. She wrote a book about it that I actually just started reading. It's amazing. So when I saw this video from another hospice worker saying like, yeah, I believe ghosts are real, spirits are real, I had to listen.
I work in hospice. Spirits are real. I'm sorry. Ghosts are real. I'm gonna be the first one to tell you. One time I'm in this room on my own and I'm cleaning this body to be bagged. I'm the only one in there, right? I'm by the body. The bathroom call light starts going off, like ringing. And I'm like, so I walk in there, press the little button, turn it off. Walk back out there, starts going off again. I walk back in there, turn it off. I walk back out to the body and the call light that's like next to her is buzzing, like it's making a buzzing noise. They don't do that. They don't make that noise. I was like, bitch, the time this girl that I work with was holding this patient's hand as they passed. And then when they like closed their eyes, passed, took their last breath, she looks up at the light starts flickering. Like immediately after the patient passed, light starts flickering. It don't do that. It don't work like that. Something was there. Not hospice, but I had this confused patient once, and he did not remember what he said 3 seconds ago. Like, he was not talking about the same stuff all day. He was super confused, right? 3 separate times throughout the day, he looks at me and asks me about the lady with long black hair standing behind me and not smiling. What the f*** do you mean? The lady with long black hair standing behind me and not smiling? Spirits are real. I'm sorry.
I'm inclined to agree with her. Spirits are real. And today we're going to be watching 13 TikToks that may just make you believe in mimics. Now, what is a mimic? I feel like we've been talking about mimics a lot this year. They've been going really viral on social media, but mimics are essentially a type of entity that can mimic, much like the name, you, a loved one, anything really that will get your attention and get you to respond to it or let it into your home. And the thought process is that once you let them in, then they can mimic you. It's also sometimes another word for flesh pedestrians, windy boys, whatever you want to call them, just not the actual word. To start off, we have a couple of videos from a user named davethebeardedmenace, an amazing name for an amazing creator who I stumbled across when his videos talking about his experiences growing up in a haunted house went viral. Dave has a plethora of scary stories on his account talking about these paranormal experiences, but there's a reason why this one about the mimic stands out. Dave says that the mimic was just that. It would mimic people's voices. I mean, to a T, he says, except that it would sound like they were in a slightly lower volume. He says it was like if somebody was watching the TV at like 5%. You would hear what sounded like someone else's voice, but just quiet enough probably that you were like, did I really just hear that?
Sometimes it sounds like it's in the next room next to you, but it's still at that very low volume. Even if someone was like screaming, it sounded very low, like, hey, help, like very, very low. I don't know really where it came from or if it was already in the house we moved in, but I do have a feeling it manifested the night my sister saw the old woman in her bedroom.
Now you, like myself, are probably wondering, old woman in the bedroom, what is the sister seeing? Don't worry, we'll get to that. Kind of put that off to the side for now. One day, Dave's mom and her friend are standing outside and they're just talking about work. They both work in retail. They're discussing retail life. When they hear what sounds like a voice repeating everything that they're saying, but in a mocking way, almost the way that like a kid would do it.
Best way I could describe it is my mom would say something like, hey, how was your day? And it would literally sound like, from the back of the garage. And they were hearing this and they're like, what the hell is that? So as two Latino women who are fearless, what did they decide to do? They decided to go investigate, like they're thinking, oh, someone's in the yard. So they heard it clear as day, someone mimicking every single time they said something. And when they went to the back of the garage, nothing. There was like nothing there. And they're like, oh, well, it's late. It's like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Maybe we imagine it was a long day at work. And then they would hear from now the front of the garage, like just mocking them every single time they said something. And they went to the front of the garage to check it out. Now, you could say it was being a distraction because my sister was by herself upstairs with the old woman, and my mom and her friend didn't go back into the house until they heard my sister scream and then describe what she saw.
Our poster says that in this particular instance, what pulled the two women out of trying to figure out what was going on with this voice was the sound of his sister screaming upstairs for their mother because she just saw an old woman in her bedroom. Dave says he's not sure if the mimic came with the house, if it was something that was already attached to them, or if it came with the old woman from the forest that night. So let's talk about the old woman, which I'm gonna put in the category of a mimic because it seems like it's sort of intertwined with this story. It sounds very mimic-like as well. Dave says that at the time, this was in the 90s, his sister was working at a local 24-hour gas station nearby, about a mile down the road. At this time, he and his family didn't have a car to get from A to B, so they pretty much walked everywhere. So one day, it's late into the night / early into the morning, his sister is walking home from a shift. And on her way back to the home, his sister starts hearing what sounds like voices coming from the woods.
And my sister was hearing voices in the forest, particularly voices calling her name. For the sake of the story, we will call my sister Marianne. So there's, she's been hearing Marianne, just all these voices from the forest. She asked my mom and her family friend, do you guys hear that? And they're like, no, we don't hear a thing. So she ignored it and kept on walking. And as she got away from the wooded area, the voices dissipated.
Now, Dave's sister had walked home with his mother and her friend. And so they kind of break off. They're standing in the yard and they're talking about retail, where they would then experience the mimic. While his sister, Mary Ann, heads into the house. And when she's going into the house, she's going through the living room. She's about to go upstairs. And she notices that their family cat is like pissed about something. Like, family cat is seeing something it doesn't really like, specifically in the sister's bedroom.
She walks into the living room and she's about to go up the stairs to her bedroom, and she sees our old family cat, our beloved cat Pencha, sitting at the top of the stairs. And she's just staring into my sister's bedroom. And my sister's like, hey, Pencha, come down here. What are you staring at? And the cat would not break eye contact with whatever she was looking at in my sister's bedroom. And I believe at this point in time, it was a long time ago, but I believe in this point in time, we already knew there was something up with the house. So my sister was very nervous to go upstairs and see what the cat was staring at. So she walks up the stairs, looks at the cat's still staring just hard into her bedroom. And my sister looks in her bedroom, and in the middle of the bedroom, her bedroom, she sees a little old lady just hunched down, like kneeling down in the middle of her bedroom. So my sister obviously is frozen in panic, and she notices like the lady has no hands. It's just nubs where the hands would be. And my sister's staring for a moment, and all of a sudden the lady just kind of turns and looks at my sister. So my sister obviously freaks out, and the lady just books it towards my sister, screaming at her in Spanish, "It is all your fault. It is all your fault. Todo es tu culpa. Todo es tu culpa." My Spanish sucks nowadays. And my sister obviously closes her eyes and covers her face. After she lowers her hands, the lady's gone. The lady is no longer there. And she hears the cat hissing. She looks at the cat, and the cat is hissing, tail wide and everything, at my sister. So, of course, what does my sister do? She screams bloody murder, runs downstairs, wakes up the whole house, and basically tells us what happened.
What do you mean there was a woman hunched down in her bedroom who ran at her screaming in Spanish? Also, the cat was reacting to it. It definitely was not all in her head. And then take into account the fact that while all of this is happening, her mother and her mother's friend are currently having a paranormal experience in the front yard of their home. Now, Dave has so many stories on his account, and we're only going to be focusing on his stories regarding the mimic today, but I highly recommend checking out his account if you like scary stories. Not only does he share his own, but he'll share his scariest viewer submissions as well. He's an amazing TikToker. Make sure to check him out. As I do with all of these videos, I will have everybody that I talk about today listed down below. But anyway, moving on here, we have a part 2 to the mimic story. Dave starts off with a story from the time that he was around 12 or 13. He had spent the whole day outside, and he wound up taking a shower at 1 in the morning. Coincidentally, he says he doesn't really think this is related, but it was the same exact day that Princess Diana passed away, and while he's in the shower, he hears something terrifying.
I'm in the shower, and outside the window right next to the shower, I could hear a woman sobbing, and it was loud. I believe that night I was probably the only one in the house. My mom would work nights. My sister moved out at the time. My brother was in the army. So I was the only one there. And I hear sobbing, and I don't even think I finished getting the soap off me. I just dried myself off, and I was out. I was just in my mom's bedroom, just chilling. So I'm like, nope, I'm not putting up with that. Not not in the shower. I'm defenseless.
Another thing that happened around this time was that Dave was in his brother's room. His brother was off in the army, so Dave would often spend time in his bedroom. And while it seems like he did this quite often, on this day, something weird happened.
I think I was reading a comic book, or I forgot what I was doing, but I distinctly heard his voice ask, "What are you doing?" But he was in the army, and he was stationed at the time at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. So obviously it wasn't him. He wasn't even living there. We're in Connecticut. He's in North Carolina. Heard his voice, clear as day.
And as this video goes on, these stories just get more and more terrifying. Whatever this thing is, it is mimicking his family members down to a T.
flash forward a little bit or a lot of bit. It was my buddy Nolan and my buddy Mike, and we were just hanging out in the living room, and we distinctly heard my nephew's voice upstairs, and he called for me, and he distinctly said, "Yo, Uncle Dave." Nephew wasn't even there at the time. I believe he was at a friend's house. He just wasn't in the house, long story short. And I remember my buddy Nolan specifically looking at me, putting his hands in his face, looking back at me. He just goes, "I f***ing hate this house," and left.
Dave even has a story of when his then girlfriend, now wife, heard what sounded like her own voice calling out to her while in that very home.
My then girlfriend, now wife, was hanging out in my bedroom upstairs. And she said she distinctly heard my voice call her from the other room. The room across the way. The room specifically that my sister saw the old woman. In the same, I don't know if this was the same night or another night, she said she distinctly heard a growl come from that room that my sister saw the old woman in. And this is many years after. This is like maybe close to 20 years or so after my sister saw the old woman in that room. Same girlfriend, now wife, was in the kitchen watching TV. I believe my mom was asleep in like the bedroom. And it was her and my cat, Sputnik at the time, just chilling. And she heard her voice, her own voice, say, "Come here," from the upstairs bedroom. I think I was out getting something, or I wasn't there at the time. She was just there chilling at the house watching TV. And the cat heard it as well. And I remember her saying like the cat looked at her and upstairs, and the cat was like, "Yo, what the fuck was that?" And my wife just was like, "No." And I think either she left or she just stayed downstairs or whatever, but it just she kind of ignored it. She's like, "Nope, no." Same thing happened to me. I'm hanging out in the kitchen with the cat, watching whatever on TV, and all of a sudden we heard her voice say, "Come here," from the living room. Both me and the cat looked. We walked and investigated in the living room because at the time, Sputnik was my little buddy. Like when we heard or saw something, we go looking for it. Because if she was with me, like we go and find it. And sure enough, nothing.
And obviously all of this is terrifying. But in part 3, Dave explains that at one point, even his brother had an encounter with the mimic, or at the very least heard it. So how Dave explains it is that his dad worked really, really, really late nights. I'm talking late nights. Like the man sometimes would sleep on the job so that he could get right back to work first thing in the morning. It seems like he was a very hard worker. And one night when it's very, very late, his brother hears all of the telltale signs of their dad coming home. He hears him come through the door. He hears him go into the kitchen. He hears the lid come off of the pot of food that Dave's mother left on the stove. And I'm sure you know where this is heading.
So my brother wakes up around the time my dad should have came home, around 1 or 2 a.m. And he distinctly hears the sound of the kitchen door opening and then hitting the chair that was next to the door and sliding against the ground and hitting the table. This was a regular occurrence in the house. And my dad was very aggressive when he would open the door. He just would open it, hit it, and then he would stomp into the house like a dinosaur. And these are the distinct sounds my brother heard. So he hears my dad stomp into the kitchen, close the door, stomp into, or rather in front of like the stove, and then basically pull like the top of the pot that my mom would leave the pot of food off of the pot. He distinctly heard my dad put food onto the plate, but very aggressively. Like he heard like the wooden spoon hit the plate a bunch of times that he was putting food on the plate. He then heard my dad walk over to the kitchen table, slide another chair out against the floor, sit down, and he heard my dad begin to eat. And little by little, the sound was like dissipating, getting lower and lower as he was eating. Now, the weirdest part about all this, if it couldn't get weird enough, is that whoever it was never turned on the light for the kitchen. They did everything in the pitch black.
Dave's brother ends up literally pulling the covers over his head. He's absolutely terrified. He somehow falls asleep like that. In the morning, he comes out and he doesn't see the pot of food that he had heard his dad get into the night before. So he asks their mother, hey, did dad come home last night? To which their mom says, no, he did not come home.
So he asked my mom, hey, did Pop come home last night? And Mom was like, no, he didn't come home. He probably stayed the night over at the construction site. And my brother instantly freaked out because he distinctly heard all of this. He wasn't dreaming. He was up. He was awake. And he heard everything. And of course he tells my mom. My mom's like, oh, don't, you know, obviously because my mom knows, like, don't feed into this stuff. She's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. And then from then on, he really didn't see much since.
Absolutely terrifying. Once again, Dave is a new favorite account of mine. I highly recommend checking him out if you enjoy scary stories, but these mimic stories were too scary not to share. I feel like I have included a lot of clips of mimics here on my channel with varying degrees, I believe, of authenticity. I mean, you can never truly gauge whether or not something is real or not through the internet anyways, especially when it comes to ghosts, but hearing stories like this from the mouth of somebody who truly went through them way before mimics were ever some scary, trendy, viral thing, it's creepy to say the least. I'm having some trouble with my camera battery, so I will see you guys tomorrow to finish this video. Okay, it is the next day. I apologize about that, and I apologize for the lighting now. My camera battery charger died. I didn't realize it wasn't charging my camera batteries, had to get a new one. It was a whole thing. Anyway, back into the TikTok stories. I actually stumbled across a different video of this user, jordansmikle, and we'll talk about that video in a minute, but then I realized he also has a mimic story on his account. Jordan said that this is a story he genuinely thinks he just blocked out after it happened, and for good reason. It is terrifying. So Jordan comes home from school one day and he's pretty much home alone. Everyone else is out of the house for one reason or another in his family home. Now there's a strict no gaming on weekdays policy in Jordan's house, but he's home alone, he gets out his computer, he's going to play his game. He's in his room, he's playing his game, when suddenly he hears what sounds like something dropping right outside of his door. And he kind of ignores it, he knows he's home alone, until he hears the sound again. And this is where the story takes a terrifying turn.
Anyways, fast forward, I'm chilling on my bunk bed and all of a sudden I hear something drop from outside of my room. So I immediately think that it's my older brother coming back home from practice, and I continue doing what I was doing. About 3 seconds later of not acknowledging this noise, I hear something else drop and I decided to yell, "What are you doing?" Because keep in mind, if my older brother was in there dropping or breaking stuff, I'm not about to get the blame for it. Now tell me why I hear a woman's voice go, "making food." So I remember in that moment, I kind of froze for a bit, and you know when your heart starts beating uncontrollably and it feels like it's literally like popping out of your chest? That's what it felt like. So I remember getting up, climbing down from the top of my bunk bed and walking to my door. Now keep in mind, this whole entire time, I did not open my door. So the door's closed and I remember yelling, "What are you cooking?" So my mom could hear because I was curious, and plus my mom, she never usually cooks this early in the afternoon unless she's cooking like a big meal. So I wanted to know what she was cooking. So I remember the voice, or my mom, didn't say anything for like a while, and then all of a sudden blurts out, "I'm cooking spaghetti." The voice of my mom was like freaky. It was very monotoned. I don't know. It was just like, it wasn't like, it didn't sound real. So I remember saying one last thing, and this is where things got insane. So I ended up yelling, "I don't smell anything." And tell me why literally 3 seconds later, the voice I once heard from afar is now right at my door. So I remember it laughed and it said, "Open your door and you'll be able to smell it."
This is terrifying. He's terrified. He locks his bedroom door, and alarmingly, he hears what sounds like someone breathing on the other side. He's like, my mom is not acting like this. Like, this is not something my mother would do. He goes to his window, looks outside, and sure enough, his mom's car is not in the driveway.
My first instinct is to go up on my bed, grab my phone, and immediately call my mom, and that's exactly what I did. As I'm dialing, I started hearing my doorknob like moving, like it was jingling as if like they were gonna open it, but because I locked it, they could not open it. So I immediately hop off my bed, I run to my door, and I grab the knob so that, you know, it's not turning anymore. My mom, she finally picks up. So she answers the call, yelling at me, telling me how she's almost home, and I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, that's the mom that I know. Not this, like, weird, calm, monotoned voice that I'm hearing. So I confirm out loud that she's on her way, so I go, so you're on your way home? And like I hang up just to indicate to this person or thing that I know that they're not who I think that they are. Now, this is where things got even more crazier, because as soon as I hung up that phone, my door, whatever was behind it, starts immediately banging on it. So my heart drops to my stomach and I start screaming. The voice keeps yelling, open the door, and I'm still screaming in fear. I remember at one point the banging stopped and the voice started crying. I remember it was a soft cry and it was pleading to me. It was pleading that I open the door because it wanted to see me. And I don't know if it had me like under a spell or something, but something in me was telling me to like open the door. Like I had that urge to open the door, but thank goodness I did not. Like I knew that I shouldn't and I didn't. So about 5 minutes of just hearing these crying, more banging on the door, I finally hear my mom's car beep outside. Suddenly the crying, knocking, and doorknob moving stopped.
After all of this, finally, Jordan's mother comes home, and she had been out actually getting him more reeds for his clarinet. He had like chipped his last clarinet reed. So she's yelling, open up the door, I have your stuff. But he's like scarred from this experience he just had, thinking, is that my mom? Is it not my mom? Luckily, it was her.
I truly believe I encountered the mimic, and I'm just so thankful I did not open up that door, because whew, I would not be here right now.
That is one of the scariest stories I have ever heard around a mimic, around literally anything ever. And Jordan has a lot of stories on his account. You might be able to tell he talks about some scary stuff from time to time. How I actually found him was through his story about how his father met the smiling man in Jamaica. So let me set the scene for you. Jordan says his father was really active at this time and would always be going on like jogs and walks and stuff. And one of the trails that he would go on these jogs on didn't have any street lights. So his dad is like, I'm just gonna go for a run on this trail with my flashlight and see how far I can get. What is it like to be a man? Like, what is it like to go for a run at night with a flashlight in hand and just know that all will be well? That is a crazy feeling, I'm sure. And as soon as he starts on this trail, things are kind of weird. He's like seeing things out of the corner of his eye, but at one point as he's running around a corner, he sees a figure standing there in the darkness. He immediately points the flashlight at it. Nobody's there. But now he's on high alert. And that's when he encounters the smiling man for the first time.
My dad said he was running through the trail, made this really sharp turn, and at the corner of his eyes, he saw a figure standing there. My dad quickly shined his flashlight to then see nothing. So he said in this moment his heart stopped because he knew for a fact that he saw something. So that's when he heard the bushes moving, and then he heard a laugh coming from it. So after hearing a laugh, my dad said these exact words: "You can come out because that's not funny or I'm gonna beat your..." He said after he said that, he heard the same bushes moving. And that's when he shined his flashlight on it, but what happened next shocked him. My dad watched as this man with a very tall figure popped up from the bushes with this sinister smile. He said it was a huge smile. It looked uncanny, it was unnatural, and it was just weird. It was almost as if it was a human in disguise. My dad said he tried to ignore the smile while talking to the man, but every single thing he asked, the man would not answer, and the smile would just get bigger. After hearing no response from this man, he did what anybody else in the world would do. He booked it. He ran. Finally, my dad said he ran through this trail as fast as he could. Now, my dad is a runner, but this time he was a runner. So he said he was running as fast as he could, but he could still hear this man right behind him. At one point, he was able to turn around while running, shine the light on the guy, only to find out he was just standing there. Standing still, no smile, nothing. So out of fear, my dad screamed, "What do you want?" And after that, things got even more creepier. My dad said once again there was no answer from this guy. Instead, the man started to smile again and lifted his hand, pointing at my dad. My dad said after this man pointed at him, Tell me why the flashlight started to flicker.
Jordan's dad may have never seen a horror movie before, but the minute that flashlight started flickering, he was out of there. His dad was screaming, making noise, alerting anyone else who might be on the trail that something was going on, basically. And he runs all the way from the end of the trail back to the road with the streetlights nearby. As he does this, he turns around one more time to make sure that the man is not still behind him. He doesn't see anything when he turns around at first. But when he turns back, the smiling man is right in front of him.
My dad said as he turned his back to see nothing, he turned right back around to find the guy smiling right in front of him. In this moment, he went full defense mode. He said he struck the man with the flashlight right in the head, and as he was down, he ran all the way back home. He said he locked every door, every window. He slept with his lights on. He even got in trouble for doing that, but he did not care. No. But ever since that night, my dad said he never saw that man again, and he'll never step foot in Jamaica, because honestly, that guy might be waiting for him at the airport.
The way Jordan tells stories is so good. Like, I could really see the smiling man, or what I think the smiling man might have looked like in my head the whole time he was telling the story. And if I was his father, I probably would have been frozen in fear. So good on him for actually booking it. But it made me wonder, what was the smiling man? Was it a mimic type of entity that wanted to lure him in? Was it something else? Was it an actual person just being creepy? And then if it was, how did they like get in front of him at the end of the trail like that? I don't know. I kind of think that this was a mimic type of entity as well, especially given like the story that Jordan just told about his experience with a mimic later on, because this thing that happened to his dad obviously happened, I think, long before Jordan was in the picture. But I'm curious what you guys think the smiling man was. I stumbled across what I believe is a mimic story from a TikToker named unty.tan.b. Now, her parents bought a house in New Jersey in 1968 after it had literally just been built in 1966. They were like the first owners of this house, and this house was so haunted, to the point that this poster's mother wouldn't even sleep in the same bedroom as her father because that was the room that everything seemingly happened in.
So the neighborhood itself was supposedly built on top of a burial ground, or an Indian burial ground. And they said a lot of activity was happening throughout the neighborhood, and a lot of the houses, when they used to talk to their neighbors, they shared a lot of the same stories.
And it seems like the whole family kind of knew this was the case. And the poster says that these paranormal happenings were happening like long before she was even a twinkle in her parents' eye. But they couldn't just leave this house they had bought. I feel like that's a lot of the times what people will say, you know, oh, if it's an insanely haunted house, just get out. But what are you gonna do when all your money is sunk into this one place? And one day our poster is in that bedroom, her parents' bedroom, where her mother will not sleep. Her mom is downstairs mopping. Her dad is out. She has, I think she said, like 6 other siblings. None of them are really around. And she's in front of a mirror in her parents' room when she sees something standing behind her.
And I was in their room for whatever reason. I was just playing with their stereo system. Behind the stereo system, there was a wall mirror. And I just remember playing at the stereo system, looking up, and my mom was standing behind me. I could see her in the mirror, but my mom wasn't wearing anything. And when I mean she wasn't wearing anything, I mean she was completely not wearing anything. So I turn around thinking this is weird as shit, and I look and my mom's not there. She's not behind me. So I turn back around to look in the mirror and she's still standing there. So I run as fast as I can out the room, hit my knee on our couch, start crying. My mom's like, don't go in there. That's why I don't go in there. The only person that slept in my room, in that room, was my dad. Nothing bothered him.
Now, that is a mimic if I've ever heard of one. I mean, that's literally what a mimic does. It mimics something that you know, somebody that you know, tries to lure you in with this like false sense of security. It certainly sounds like a mimic type of entity to me, but then she tells another story in this video that makes me wonder if it was even something else. One night there's a really big storm and the power's out, and she says that her mom was kind of just consoling all the kids, like telling them stories, talking to them, trying to keep them occupied as the power is out, trying to keep them calm. And they hear a huge crash from the kitchen. She said literally what sounded like the ceiling fan fell in the kitchen.
Sound like our ceiling fan in the kitchen had fallen out of the ceiling onto the floor. Glass went everywhere. So my dad comes out of the room, his room that he was in. He's like, oh my God, like I got to clean this up. And my mom's like, yeah, well, watch your feet. You know, don't walk in there with no shoes on. There's glass on the floor. So he goes to bend the corner to go look. He goes back in his room and he doesn't say anything. He closes the door. And my mom's like, are you going to clean up the glass? Are you going to clean it up? And he's like, I'm not finna go in there. So my mom's like, why? Why aren't you going in there? So she gets up, she goes and looks in the kitchen, and there's nothing on the floor. Nothing at all.
That certainly was not all that happened in the house. They would hear what sounded like somebody moving around in the kitchen, pots and pans moving, and her mother would always just say, don't look in the kitchen when things like that would happen.
We used to hear books slamming in the upstairs room. We all slept, like me, my mom, my brothers, all of us slept in the living room because we were so afraid of that house. My mom didn't want to move. My dad didn't want to move. They bought the house. They were trying to sell it. We used to hear books slamming, just like all throughout the night. You would hear, like, it sounded like someone was taking a textbook and just slamming it on the floor as hard as they could. Some nights we would hear in the kitchen, like someone was clanking pots and pans, spoons and forks. And my mom would say, don't look in the kitchen, just ignore it and go to bed.
Eventually it stopped. Eventually they left the house. But I mean, whatever this was, mimicking her mother like that in the mirror in such a terrifying way. And then the ceiling fan seemingly falling out of the ceiling, but nothing had actually crashed in the kitchen. Whatever it was had to be pretty powerful. The poster says, like, this is not stuff that she plays with, and I fully understand why after having paranormal experiences like these. Now, the final TikToks that we're going to be talking about today, and I know you guys are like, this video is literally halfway over. What do you mean the final TikToks we're going to be talking about today? The rest of this video is all focusing on a story coming from the same account. That being the TikTok account of a man named Hunter, who went incredibly viral one day after starting a video by saying,
"Good morning, it's 5 a.m. Let me tell you a very scary story about how I was stalked by what I think was a skinwalker."
Now, this might sound familiar to you if you watch my live streams, because I actually watched these videos for the first time with you guys on a live where I was watching like scary videos that you have tagged me in. And man, this story, I mean, it is like a 7-part thing, genuinely creeped me out for the rest of the night the first time I heard it. So Hunter starts us off by saying that he grew up in Temecula, specifically in an area called Duluth. He's lived there twice in his life, once as a very young boy, and then I think a little bit older into his adolescence. But when he was very, very young, his family lived in an area that was surrounded by like groves and trees and stuff. And he said when he was growing up, he would always hear what sounded like voices talking to him from the trees in a language he couldn't really understand, but he would like talk back to them. They would find arrowheads in the backyard, and this area just seemed very, very active. He said one thing that always stuck with him though is that as a little boy, anytime he was alone in the backyard, he always felt like he was being watched.
And so one night when I was a little boy, I asked my dad in the middle of the night to walk down to the kitchen with me and get a glass of water. And we had this really big plate window in the kitchen, and staring back at me were these giant orange eyes. And I have never been able to like describe the fear and the dread of seeing these unblinking giant orange eyes. It was probably an animal, honestly, but you can't rationalize that when you're like 4 or 5 years old. Even now, whenever I have nightmares, I genuinely see those orange eyes.
The orange eyes come back into play, by the way, in the most terrifying way possible. As I said, he's lived in this area twice, once when he was very young and then when he was a little bit older. When his father passes away, he and his family move back to Duluth. He's kind of in like a neighborhood in a residential area. There are kids his age that he can play with and go on bike rides and stuff with. And something that he and his brother loved was that there was a random tree house in the grove of trees near their home. They had always wanted a tree house. This was just something they'd always talked about. And so they're like, this is our tree house. We're laying claim on it and we're gonna fix it up. It's like a rotted, slowly deteriorating tree house. But something he said was strange was the smell.
The thing with that is there's a lot of rust. And so like you can already smell this like very like tangy, rusty smell in the air. And so we then say, this is our treehouse. No one's clearly using it, so let's make it ours. And we go back to the house and we start getting tools. We start working on this. And whenever we have neighbor friends over, we go work on the treehouse. It was basically like Mom would take us to Home Depot. We'd get a couple 2x4s, some nails, and start hammering it in. And so about a month later, my brother Chase and my mom go on a field trip to Sacramento because that was the big trip at the time. And so I'm staying with some neighbor friends and their son, Taylor. And I get on my bike one day after school and I'm like, hey, I'm going to go ride my bike. And they're like, oh, where are you going to go? And I said, oh, the treehouse. And the mom is like, what treehouse? I'm like, oh, you know, the one that's like up Sunset Terrace. And she's like, honey, don't go there. I was like, why? And she's like, just don't go there, please. I'm like, okay, this is weird. So I went there because I'm dumb. When I get there, there's a kid. There's a kid just working on the treehouse, and I've never seen him before. And so I'm like, hey, hello. And he like waves back, and so I come up and I'm like, hi, I'm Hunter, what's your name? And he says, I'm working on the treehouse. I'm like, yeah, I see that, that's cool. Like, what, like, is this yours? And he's like, no, I like it though. I'm like, okay. So he's giving like fairly short one-word answers. The thing that I'm noticing now is that rusty smell from before is heightened. It is a lot more intense. Like, it is like this rust. It's like blood and rust. It's a very metallic smell. And I'm starting to get pretty queasy, like really off-putted. And it's getting to the point where I'm almost about to throw up, and this kid is just like, he's working on the treehouse, but it's almost as if like he's acting out working on the treehouse. Like, he's not actually doing anything. And so I'm trying to get like asking more questions, like where he lives, and he's only really giving one-word answers if he gives answers at all. And I'm just starting to feel weird, and my stomach feels sick from the smell. And I'm like, hey, I'm actually gonna go. He's like, I know, you're gonna go now. I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, well, I'll see you later. Still don't have his name. And I get on my bike and I ride away, and I like look back, and he's then standing in the field, like standing where these houses were supposed to be built. Later that night, I can't sleep. Like, I can't sleep at all. And I feel this like need to like look out the window. And there's this kid standing at the top of the driveway. I'm like, genuinely, like all the hair is like standing on my hand. He's like standing in the driveway, and it's clearly this kid, but it's as if this kid is like crooked. It's literally like he's looking like this. He's just standing there. And I like blink it, and like I close the blinds, and I can feel like when you feel someone's presence like coming up to a window, you know they're there. And I could not sleep that entire night because I felt that presence at that window. And like right before, in the morning, it was a Friday. And so I just had to check for myself. And I went outside before we left for school, and I looked, and there were like these weird misshapen, like, it looked like a footprint, but it was almost as if it was like made by an animal. It was just standing in front of that window.
And I get chills every time he describes the misshapen figure by the window that kind of looked like this little boy. I mean, down to the footprints that were outside of it. It's absolutely terrifying, and whatever this thing was clearly wanted him to know that it was there. This goes insanely viral, and the people need a part 2. So he comes back and basically says that after his mom and his brother went on this field trip to Sacramento, that they, came home, but weird things were happening around the house. Doors would open and close on their own. His computer would turn on by itself in the middle of the night. And then he talks about the dark figure that he would see standing in the house.
Whenever I would wake up in the middle of the night, I would always see a figure. And like, it was just this dark figure that would always be like just ever so slightly out of glance. Like sometimes, like when you see shapes at night, you can pretty much figure out that it's something in your house. This was humanoid. This was a figure. And what I don't I can't explain is the fact that light would not reflect off of it like a normal object. It's as if light went into it and stopped.
We now come to the part of this story where a once in every 30 years snowstorm happens in Temecula. It's 5 in the morning. Hunter goes to his mom's room. He's like, "It's snowing outside, Mom." She's like, "You are not awake right now. Go back to bed." And as he's going back to his room, he sees the crooked figure once more.
And so as I'm on my way back from my mom's room to my room, I pass by the kitchen, which has a big window. What is standing outside? It's the crooked figure. It's just standing there in the snow. And I can clearly tell that snow is on it. And I'm like, genuinely, every single fiber of my being knows what I saw. It was just standing there. And the thing that I still can't explain is that its eyes were orange. I know in part 1, I said it could have been an animal. Every fiber of my being says that that thing had orange eyes. It felt like this thing has been following me since I was a child. Later that day, we play in the snow, all that, but I take a second just for myself and I walk out back and I see the same prints. It's the exact same prints that were outside the window. It's there.
And after this point, he feels like he can always see this thing out of his peripheral. Like it's always following him, observing him.
It never felt like it wanted to do anything nefarious. It always felt like it was curious, like it wanted to know more. It wanted some amount of a connection, like it, in a weird way, it felt like it wanted a friend. Yet the way and the manner of how it was occupying my space was terrifying to a 10-year-old. And so a couple years later, when we go to sell the house is emptied at this point, and I'm just like walking around. I don't know where my mom is, and my brother is somewhere on the other side of the house. And I hear the voice from the treehouse just call out saying, "Goodbye." And it's always as if, because then I start trying to follow the voice, like, where is this coming from? I'm trying to like run around. I'm trying to like find it. I can't find it. There's a little shed on the property. Cute little shed. And I go outside and I see the boy from the treehouse. Whatever that I saw all those, months ago. And he goes into the shed. And so like I run into the shed. There's nothing there. There's a part of me that feels like that spirit, whatever it was trapped. And it was just looking for some amount of a companion.
So that's it. They move out of the house and he sees the little boy one last time. He hears him say goodbye. And that's the end of the story, right? Well, a lot of people kept asking, why did your friend's mom, why did the neighbor friend's mom say, do not go to that tree house? So Hunter reaches out to her and just basically says, I'm, telling this story. Why did you say that? And he gets an email back from her.
I reached out to my next door neighbor and I asked her about why she said not to go to the treehouse. And so this is from Taylor's mom. "Hi Hunter, it's been a long time. Wow, yes, I do remember the treehouse. As memory serves me, when we first moved to the neighborhood, we went on a walk one evening up around where your house and several others were still being built. For whatever reason, we decided to walk one of the lots that had just been graded. We had only been there for a couple minutes, but there was this sudden awful smell. We both smelled it and couldn't place where it was coming from. So when I looked towards the trees at the far end of the lot line, I could have sworn I saw a small boy standing under what looked like a pile of rotten wood stuck in a tree. A couple days later, Taylor remarked on meeting a young boy his age in our backyard who told him about a treehouse and said he should go to it. Even today, my skin crawls just thinking about it. He had never seen that little boy since. I watched your video. Yes, I think that was the thing Taylor and I both saw. Give all my love to your mom and brother. May God bless you and keep you safe."
The fact that she described, not exactly what he was saying, of course, but so much of what she was saying really played into the stories that he had already told, just chills all over my body. At this point, I am so invested in this story, and there's still a lot to get through. And a lot of people are sort of chiming in on this, saying this area that you're talking about, Deleuze, like, there is just a weird energy. I think in part 1, he said something to the line of, this area has a very ancient energy. It's very mystical. It feels different than anywhere else. A commenter says, the moment you said Deleuze, I got scared. Had a piece of property off of Carancho Road. You ever hear the drums? And this is where Hunter kind of explains this insane phenomena that has come out of the Temecula area, I suppose, about these drums that people will hear. Drums that would come out of nowhere and echo through the canyons of Deleuze. And even as he's explaining this, the hair on his arm stands straight up. Like, this is a phenomena he's familiar with.
Any time that something weird would happen in and around Deleuze, so voices in the trees, seeing this little boy right before we moved out, or just in random times during the year, there would be the sound of drums that would just echo through Deleuze, through the canyons, through the trees. And I could never place, and like, I'm getting goosebumps again. It was as if it sounded like someone was preparing for war. It sounded like the beating of a rhythmic drum, of drumming up this energy, this weird, honestly undescribable sense. And so one of the times that I distinctly remember the drums happening and then something weird occurring was the first time that my computer turned on in the middle of the night. This was after my mom and my brother got back from the field trip, and I was outside for whatever reason at night, and I could hear just a couple drum beats. It was a doom, 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 doom. And it was far in the distance. It was not close. And so later that night, when I'm falling asleep, I see this figure just kind of walk past. And so where my bedroom is, there's a hallway, and then there's my computer right here. We had like this little like alcove nook. And so there were two computers. There was my brother's and there was mine. And so I'm looking through the door. My bed's here, doorway's here, and this figure just walks past. And as he walks past, or it walks past, I don't know what it is, it like stops and it clearly turns and just looks and stands and watches. And I like, it feels like we're having like a 20-minute stare off, and then it just walks away. And so I get out of bed and I look, there's nothing there, but I turn around, and like right as I turn around, another like shadow or whatever like goes out, like it was waiting in this doorway and leaves. And then when it leaves, like there's the Windows XP like turn on sound, like doo 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 doo, and like my computer boots on, and I can't explain that. Like I was nowhere near close to the computer, and it just turns on, and it's like midnight. And so my mom comes out of her bedroom and she's like, "What are you doing awake? Go back to bed. Why are you turning on your computer?" I'm like, "I didn't turn on my computer." And she's like, "You're lying, go to bed." The drums are something that I know exactly what they sound like, and they were the precursor to everything. Everything, any time that something weird happened, there would be a rhythmic beating. There would be something in the air after this doom, 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 doom.
I just found that so interesting because this commenter brought it up, and I was like, what do you mean the drums? And of course, Hunter has an experience with it. Is it tied into this entity that he has become so familiar with throughout his childhood? Is it something else entirely? I just heard a seagull outside of my room. I don't live anywhere near the ocean at all. I have literally lived in this house for nearly 4 years. I have never heard a seagull outside of my house. All right, moving on to the next video. This is actually the point where Hunter realizes he should not be calling the thing that he was stalked by its actual name. He refers to it this round as a flesh pedestrian, and thanks the commenters who informed him he probably should not say its name as it calls the entity to you. Now, he ends up drawing in this video what it was he saw, starting off with the orange eyes that he saw first from when he was a very young boy.
I genuinely hope that what I saw then was an animal, because just seeing those two unblinking eyes is still terrifying. But what I know you guys care about is the crooked figure. That's kind of what it looked like. It was like that. I'm really bad at drawing. And then, the footprints kind of looked like this. It was like it was a human's footprint, so I drew it on the left. But it was as if there were like paw pads and then like these longer toes that kind of like came into points. And something else that I wanted to draw really quick, and this is also something where I know I said in part 5 I would go back to the treehouse. I'm reaching out to the Pechanga tribe of the Luiseno Indians who lived in the area, just so that I can understand the area better. I don't want to go back into that area and bring this back. But when I've been reflecting on this story, I remember when we first got to the treehouse, seeing this carving in the tree, and it was like, it was there for a while. Like, I don't know what it means, but it was in the tree where, like, in the actual tree where the treehouse was. It looked like that.
Now, after giving us this little demonstration of what he saw, I mean, listen, it really put some things into perspective for my brain, just seeing a representation of what he saw as a child. He explains that he actually wants to go back to the treehouse. And in part 6, the final part of this story, Hunter returns to the treehouse. And he felt like he was being called back. I feel like I watch a lot of these videos. You know, I'm watching scary videos on a daily, if not hourly basis. I'm constantly pulling things that you guys tag me in. And I have never felt an energy quite like what he shows in this video. It is so palpable and otherworldly, and I'm just gonna let you watch it for yourself, but I'm not surprised that these are the experiences he's had here.
Forgot how quiet it was up here. Even after all this time, they never developed this lot. Holy shit, it is still there. Holy shit, it's still there. I don't believe my eyes, it's still there. That's it. That's the treehouse. God, my heart is racing. Of all the trees that were through here, there were trees all through here, including where this house was. The one that stays is the treehouse. Yeah, we put that there. That, we built those steps. I'm not seeing where the symbol was. There used to be a branch right here where I saw the symbol. It wasn't on the tree trunk, it was jutting off right here. This is it. The smell's gone. Kind of that heaviness that I always felt is gone too. Whatever spiritual energy is still here, I give you peace. I was never meant to be here. I'm sorry, but I hope sharing your story brings you peace and closure, as it has brought me. This story is finished. There's no more details, nothing more to talk about. Because I have found peace, as I feel like whatever I saw found peace for itself. My heart breaks for all the trees that were cut down, because the energy and the mysticism of that area is gone. Whether that's because I grew up or something else, I'll never know.
And with that, the story ended. He's never talked about it since, as far as I know. Hunter still is like a storyteller and stuff and has other videos on his account that I highly recommend checking out. As with all of these videos, I will have everybody that I talked about today listed down below. But that is the end of his flesh pedestrian mimic story. And that is the end of this video. Wow. Did you make it to the end of this video? Are you here? I kind of can't believe that you're here. This might be my actual longest YouTube video I've ever posted. I've streamed for really long periods of time, like 3 hours is nothing for a stream. But in terms of an actual YouTube video, I've never posted anything this long before. So if you did get to the end here, thanks so much. That's so cool of you. I really, really, really appreciate it. And yeah, give the video a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I want to say a big thank you to my subscribers who are members of the channel. If you want to join the channel memberships and get extra members exclusive perks like members only videos, polls to help me decide on future video topics, members only updates, and so much more, you can click that little join button somewhere around the screen. We would love to have you. An extra special thank you to my VIP loves for their continued and generous support of the channel. I love and appreciate you all very, very much. And I love you all very much. I will see you in my next video. Bye.